Our Monday, May 10th to order. I think that for those of you watching at home, we've got Councillor Chris Ross is joining us electronically. Welcome, Councillor Ross. And also we've got several administrative support here. To be honest with you, I can't make out the names, but I know that the rest of our directors and some engineering services people are on board as well. Yes. Very good. Everybody had an opportunity to look over the agenda? Anything you'd like to consider adding, or are we happy with the way that it is? Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Move the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Anyone else? All those in favor? Unanimously approved as presented. And I believe that we also have a guest that has joined us as well. Mr. Kevin Warren, with the Executive Director for the Parkland Airshed Management Zone, commonly referred to as PAMS, is here to give us a presentation. Welcome, Kevin. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm relying on someone there to put the presentation up on the screen so I can follow it from my computer. There we go. Okay. You can go to the next slide, Ross. Yeah, first off, thanks to Ross and thanks to Council for giving me the opportunity to come before you today and provide you an update about the Parkland Airshed Management Zone and to invite the City of Lacombe to participate in PAMS. What are we? We're a nonprofit society monitoring air quality and addressing air quality issues in West Central Alberta. Three primary stakeholder groups: industry, government, and the public and non-government organizations. And we were the third provincial airshed to form in the province. Next slide. What are airsheds? It's a different approach rather than doing air monitoring that is driven by compliance for industrial facilities with centralized top-down decision-making and no or limited local input. It's allowing local stakeholder groups to decide how they want to monitor the air quality and how to put together management plans best suited for an area's unique conditions, sources, and issues. Next. There's currently 10 airsheds that we don't completely blanket the province at this point, but we do account for over 90% of Alberta's population. Each airshed is run independently, but we do liaise with each other in organizing the Alberta Airsheds Council. And similar to PAMS, airsheds, other airsheds also do monitoring. They do air quality management and provide public engagement and education. Next. And this is a map of the Parkland Airshed Management. We were formed in 1997, began monitoring in 1999, covering approximately 40,000 square kilometers, and most recent population estimate would be around 275,000 people. Next slide. What do we specifically do? Well, we operate an air quality monitoring program that's in alignment with a provincial network, including monitoring that's done by other zones. From that monitoring, we report on regional air quality and any monitoring that we've done to address issues. We have a formal process for identifying and addressing air quality issues throughout the zone. We get our funding using fair and equitable emissions-based and per capita funding formulas. We communicate to inform, educate, and involve all our stakeholders. And then we represent the region on a number of strategic alliance project teams, provincial government ad hoc committees, and as I mentioned earlier, the Alberta Airsheds Council. Next. What is the value that PAMS? Well, we're a transparent, credible information source that makes sure data is available to everyone in a timely manner and through a neutral science-based approach to air quality monitoring. We're effective in that we allow for industry, governments, and the public to liaise and collaborate on a wide variety of issues regarding local and regional air quality. And then we are responsive in that we respond to our stakeholders' requests and needs for monitoring, for reporting and education, and ensuring that any regulatory requirements that the monitoring must meet are met. Next. So why should you be concerned about air quality? Well, one word, health. Air quality has major impacts on human health and the environment. Airsheds in Alberta are critical to collecting what's called an air quality health index, and this is a tool that allows the public to easily understand how safe is the air for me to breathe. And the nice thing about the Air Quality Health Index is that it's consistent right across Canada. And so the Air Quality Health Index in Alberta means the same thing as it does in Nova Scotia. So if you're traveling across Canada, you can compare air quality from one area to the other. Globally, we know air pollution is responsible for an estimated 6.5 million deaths annually. And specifically in Canada, Health Canada estimates that there's between 14,000 to 15,000 deaths in Canada that are related to air pollution. We know that if we have better air quality, it reduces heart attacks and hospital visits, avoids thousands of child asthma attacks, and prevents millions of lost school and work days in Canada alone. Some of the pollutants that we monitor are also greenhouse gases or contribute to the formation of greenhouse gases. And cleaner air reduces damage to crops, forests, surface waters, and infrastructure such as building, bridges, and the data can be used to help address climate change impacts. Next slide. There we go. So let's talk a little bit about PAMS and the city of Lacombe then. PAMS has conducted air quality monitoring on 3 previous occasions in the winter months of 2005, early 2006, in the summer and fall of 2012. And this was actually 6 months of monitoring. And then again in the spring of 2018. And so this is part of a routine monitoring program that PAMS has to go around and collect air quality data on a regular schedule in the larger population centers. And we're planning on our next deployment in Lacombe in 2023. The city of Lacombe was a member of PAMS from 2005 through 2011. On 3 occasions, we've held our annual general meeting in Lacombe, most recently in June of 2019. And we have held our annual issues identification meeting in Lacombe once. And this was part of the process I was talking about earlier about gathering input on what are the issues that we should be monitoring. Looks like we went back one slide. We need to go forward the other direction. Okay. So to date, the fair market value of the monitoring that we've conducted adds up to about $114,000. And even though the city withdrew their membership in 2011, that has not impacted PAMS's monitoring of air quality in Lacombe. And for 2023, it would be regardless of your membership status. Just should indicate that so the cost of the monitoring that's being done in Lacombe is being covered by the other municipalities, industries, and the government to date. If you were to join for 2021, based on our funding formula, your fee would be roughly $4,400. Next slide, please. And this is just the makeup of our revenue for our 2021 budget, $619,000. Industries kicking in about 50%, Alberta Environment and Parks about 38%, municipalities 7%, and the other 4% is a surplus that we carried over from 2020. Next. And this is just the calculation how we arrive at that $4,400. It's based on non-industrial emissions and then the latest population census numbers that we have divided by the total zone population. You do the math and you come to $4,400. Next. A little bit more. So in addition to paying a membership fee, there is an opportunity, if Lacombe were interested, to have an alternate position on our board. Typically meets about five times a year. And then we also have a couple of working committees. The technical working group oversees the operation of the air monitoring program. Communications committee looks after getting the word out about air quality, about educating the public. Lacombe also falls with PM 2.5 response plan that PAMS helped Alberta Environment and Parks develop along with other stakeholders. That response plan is currently undergoing a 5-year review, and the results of that review should be posted in the next 6 months or so. There's new Canadian Ambient Air Quality Standards, or CAQS, for a number of compounds that are now in effect. And there's also updated Alberta-specific air quality objectives that are being developed for nitrogen dioxide and sulfur dioxide. And so PAMS has been involved in the discussions around those new objectives. In addition, we also represent the interest of our members on advisory committee formed by Alberta Environment Parks, known as Red Deer Air Quality Advisory Committee, and look, could have representation on that committee directly if they're interested, or they could be represented through PAMS. Next slide, please. Additionally, should the arise, PAMS can provide technical expertise to Lacombe on air quality issues. Having air quality data is an essential component to sustainable development. Information about local regional air quality from sources that are seen as credible in the eyes of the public is critical to sustainable development policies and programs. Some of the things that we're working at, currently we're considering expanding our eastern boundaries to include more of Red Deer County and Three Hills County and possibly some of the other counties located to the east. Looking at the emerging field of citizen science, so engaging the public to assist in our monitoring. And then also there's a Rover 3 monitoring program that is currently, because of COVID, it's on hold, but what this will be monitoring emissions from vehicles along highways at various locations throughout Alberta. And we currently have, I think it's 3 days out of 21 days booked for the PAMS area, and that's study resume. Next. So a little bit about the monitoring that we do. We do two kinds of monitoring. We do continuous monitoring where we can tell you what the air concentration for various pollutants is to the nearest minute. And we're monitoring very, very low numbers in the parts per millions, in the parts per billion range. So the instruments are quite sensitive, and they're kept in a heated and cooled monitoring trailer, such as the one in the picture. Next slide. And then we also do passive monitoring, which is a little bit more low-tech approach, but it's significantly less expensive and gives us coverage across the zone. And what it does there is it monitors monthly average concentrations. So, that program has been in place now for about 20 years. So it's given us a pretty good idea of where the hotspots are in the zone and, what air quality has been doing over time. Next slide. So we have 4 of the continuous monitoring trailers, and they're set up to monitor a broad range of air quality pollutants, both naturally occurring and man-made. 3 of them are at permanent locations, 2 in the city of Red Deer, and then 1 in a rural location southeast of Caroline. And then we have our Dr. Martha Caustic Portable, which we move around to different sites in the zone, responds to regional quality concerns, monitors the population centers, as I was talking earlier. And then also if there's some technical data gaps, we can use it to address those as well. The passive monitoring station network is now consists of 28 stations. At one time there was 36, but a number of years ago we did an assessment of the data that was being collected and determined that we could remove a number of stations without affecting the quality of the data we were getting. And so that was done as a cost savings measure. Next. So these are the locations of the passive monitoring stations, the small circles that are either blue or green or both colors, and then the 3 permanent air quality monitoring stations, the Riverside and Lancaster station in Red Deer, and then the Caroline station. And then the portable monitoring station has done monitoring all across primarily I would say the eastern 2/3 of the zone. That's the populated part of our zone. We have a little bit of monitoring out west around forest fire issues and to collect some background data, but most of the monitoring has been in the eastern part of the zone. Next slide. How to get data out? Well, we report it on our website. You can go on and see live continuous data to the nearest hour. There's an app for the Air Quality Health Index that you can load onto your smartphone and look at the sites that way. We publish an annual report. We have, in addition to our website, we have a Facebook page and a Twitter account. Then the Airsheds Council is now publishing an annual air quality report. We have our own monthly member reports, and then all the data that we collect is submitted to a provincial database, and that's available to go back and look at historical data as well. So there's a number of ways to access the data. Next slide. Next slide. So what you see here is an overhead map of Lacombe with a pointer for the location of our air quality monitoring site. All 3 times that we have done monitoring, we have used the same site. It's located near the intersection of Woodland Drive and 5th Street. Go to the slide. And so what we're looking at here is fine particulate matter, or what's known as PM 2.5. It's smaller than 2.5 microns in diameter, so it can get right down deep into your lungs. And what we're looking at here is for the month of July, back when we were doing the monitoring in 2012, and we had some forest fires burning out of the province, but you can see that air knows no boundaries. And so in fact, we did have some, we had an exceedance of the air quality guideline and also an exceedance of the daily air quality objective. But this was related to forest fires. Next. And then one of the things that we monitor are oxides of nitrogen. Along with unburned hydrocarbons, these are probably the 2 pollutants of most concern when we're talking about motor vehicle emissions. And so this is averaging all the hourly concentrations for the monitoring that we did in 2012, and then seeing which hours had what levels. And so you see there's a very strong 2-peak diurnal pattern. So you can see the levels go up certainly during the early morning, during the rush hour, and then they kind of go down in the daytime as we have more heating and mixing of pollutants, so it brings it down. And then as things start to cool off going into the evening and people are, going out shopping or to maybe do sports or whatever, it kind of keeps the peak. It's a little bit slower to come to a peak, but then it starts to go down when people go to bed. Next slide. Wind, what we call a windrose, is for the 3 times that we've done monitoring. So it's a very, very strong flow from the south. And so that's something to keep in mind because the air that you're breathing, it's coming from other places, and depending what's happening in those other places can also affect your health. Next slide. Okay, next slide. Slide doesn't seem to be advancing here. There we go. So in summary then, with the 3 periods of monitoring that we've done to date, with the exception of the fine particulate matter, the levels have been within ambient air quality objectives. So we would conclude that the air quality in Lacombe is very good, consistent with its size in relation to the air quality we see in other similar-sized Alberta towns and cities. And the wind patterns suggest that the current monitoring station site is suitable for assessing Lacombe's air quality, and that frequently the city of Red Deer is upwind of Lacombe. And our next monitoring survey is scheduled for 2023. And I think that might be the final slide. I'm not sure. One more. Next slide. Okay, next slide. It's not advancing again. Well, we just lost it. Okay, yeah, that was, I believe, the final slide.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. We appreciate that. Any questions from council? Getting off the hook pretty easy tonight, Mr. Warren. Keep up the good work.
Okay, well, thank you very much once again for giving me the opportunity, and I hope you have a very productive meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And we were scheduled for an additional presentation this evening. Is London, has she joined us yet?
Hello.
So, hi there. For everyone watching at home, Melissa Blunden is the Executive Director and Curator for the Lacoma District Historical Society. And I understand that you're going to present to us the pending Flatiron building lease.
Yes. Well, first of all, I just would like to say good evening and thank you for finding time for me tonight. I know you probably have a very busy schedule, so I won't take up too much of your evening. But if I miss anything in my presentation, please feel free to ask me questions. I am very excited about this project, so I tend to jump on it a little bit. But so as you may be aware, the Lacoma District Historical Society is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. A large aspect of this long-term success of the Society has been in retaining our public trust responsibilities. As a public institution, we are funded through various levels of government, so it's very important that we're transparent with not only everything we do financially, but also in regards to our collections. The collections, these items, they're actually not in fact owned by the Historical Society, but by the people of Alberta. So it's important that we take this public trust level responsibly, and this is because it can impact a donor if they come to the museums and they want to know that their artifacts or records that they're donating will be kept in perpetuity and in good condition and are provided to both the public and researchers so that they have access to this information and material culture for years to come. Our accreditation that we've had since 2008 from the Alberta Museums Association ensures that we are performing these duties at a minimum standard, which we then have to prove each time that we do a renewal with them. The Lacoma District Historical Society was actually recently nominated by the AMA to become an accredited leader in the Alberta Museums Institution. Because we not only meet the minimum requirements, but we have such a high commitment to these standards. So in addition to our public trust responsibilities, we're also a service provider with our programs, events, research, and exhibits to the community and visitors alike that we provide. While our main goal has always been to collect and preserve important artifacts and archival records for the region, as well as maintaining our facilities, a byproduct of all of this work is to inspire the community members to engage with their own histories and their own cultures and to develop their own lifelong relationships with their roots. So cultural facility assessment report by the Canadian Conservation Institute, or the CCI, was presented for information to Council on May 28th, 2018 by my predecessor, Marie Perron. And at that meeting, she laid out the Society's plans for immediate improvements to our two heritage sites that would hold us over until a purpose-built facility was available for us. These came directly from the CCI's facility report and included upgraded HVAC system at the Michener House, installation of water detection and flood alarms at the Michener House, restoration to the doors and windows and roof of the blacksmith shop, installation of fire suppressant systems at both facilities, rehousing of artifacts and records with archival standard boxes and PAT, which is a photographic activity test boxes, upgrade to the security systems at both facilities, development of an emergency response plan, and the development of an integrated pest management policy, and to build a new museum. So we had quite a bit to work on. And in the past 2.5 years, we made a lot of progress on that list. We've completed almost all of the items, in fact. The exception being that rehousing artifacts and records is an ongoing endeavor. The boxes are about $80 a piece and they hold one artifact. So it's something that we budget for annually and work on. And then the roof of the blacksmith shop, that conservation work is scheduled for later this summer. At that meeting in 2018, Marie also touched on how our collection is stored in the basement of the Michener House, which is under the water line of the city. I'm sure you've heard about that already. It puts it at risk of floods, and it is also at overcapacity. We actually were able to mitigate a flood just in January this year, but it was definitely not something we had budgeted for. So it was about $5,000 to fix the issue when we only had $4,000 for the whole year budgeted for the Michener House maintenance. So we run into things like that quite a bit with our facilities. The Historical Society at that meeting proposed a purpose-built facility that would house the records and archives for the society, for the community. And so since then, we obviously had a brand new executive director come on, and I have explored many avenues for this project, from having it being attached to the Michener House Museum on our property that we currently own, to funding a regional $4 million project on property that we would either lease or purchase. And those designs are completed, by the way, to repurposing one of our several existing facilities that are within the city of Lacombe and the Lacombe region. So we've done extensive preliminary research on a purpose-built facility, and we've had professionals in various industries give us assessments on both our current needs as well as what each individual option that I just described would be able to offer us. At this time, as the proposal you've all received indicates, we are looking to redirect some of our efforts into the Flatiron Building and into kind of re-envisioning and reimagining what that space could be. So we feel that there is an opportunity right now to elevate this iconic community asset into, or from something that has been slightly underutilized in the last couple of years, as it's been primarily an office space with some walk-in tourism services provided. And the Lacombe Regional Tourism Organization is currently experiencing its own changes and challenges, which was part of what prompted some of these conversations. With all of that in mind, we have entered into discussions with both city and county admin teams, as well as the building owner and the Lacombe Regional Tourism Board on a potential 5-year plan, which was laid out in the proposal. We have also had the building assessed by a professional museum and archives storage technician who has provided us with a plan to turn the basement into a formal collections and archives storage space, which would follow both provincial and federally set industry standards. The shelving units would be one of the largest pieces to purchase for this space, and we purposefully went with someone who would be able to make them non-permanent structures to that building, so that in the case that we needed to leave potentially after the 5 years, we could take those assets with us to a new space. And so that's the idea for the basement. It would have shelving units that would be installed that would be compact and rolling to allow for both maximizing the space and increasing access to the collection. And then they would, like I said, be removable should we have to vacate the space in the future. The main floor would turn into a visitor service gift shop, which you're probably thinking it already is that. But in essence, the whole space on the main floor would be reimagined into a professional museum gallery. So the offices that are there would be removed. The gift shop, which takes up probably 25% of the space, would be condensed into one area. And then the visitor services would be more at the front door than right now. They're kind of spread throughout the whole space. So kind of consolidating things a little bit. It would also give us space for rotating exhibits and a research station for the public to have direct access to the archives and collections in the basement. So this would be a space for the public to conduct their own family history research or genealogical research with direct access to our in-house and digital databases, which have over 40,000 different items and collections listed on them at this point. And they would also have a dedicated staff or volunteer available to assist them with getting artifacts out of the basement to look at and records as well. The second floor of the Flatiron Building is currently vacant, and it has been offered to us for the remainder of 2021 for free by the building owner at this time. And so the idea with that would be to relocate the current office of the Lacombe Regional Tourism Executive Director upstairs. And then myself as well, I would relocate my office from the Michener House Museum over to the second floor of the Flatiron Building once the archives and collections have also moved over. The second floor also provides an additional gallery space, potentially for the City of Lacombe's public fine art collection. And we also have a fine art collection of about 40 pieces right now as well. So while access to this space can be difficult, the building owner has committed to assisting with solutions on this. So one solution proposed was to install a chairlift at the back entrance, which could assist individuals to at least gain access to that main floor instead of using the front steps outside, which can be quite challenging depending mobility issues as well. Yeah, and so then finally, potential funders for this project include the City of Lacombe and Lacombe County, but also the Federal Ministry of Culture and provincial government, as well as corporate, private donors and sponsors. And we would offset some of the costs as well. I know that was explained a little bit in the proposal, but we had some ideas for different events, including a heritage fashion show, movie nights, different tours and programming, exhibit openings, even partnering with local companies and doing a whiskey tastings, like just some fun things like that that are a little bit different in the community. And it would allow us to host exhibits that are both developed in-house, but also from other institutions like Alex and Blackfalds, Bentley and Muir. And we could even get a small gallery or a small exhibit for 1,000 square feet from the Royal Ontario Museum or the Royal BC Museum, because we have that accreditation. So we're able to rent those and have them there as a tourist attraction, but also just an asset to the community. And that is it from me. I timed it earlier at 8 minutes. I'm not sure if I made that, but I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you, Melissa. Council, any questions?
I do have a question. Thank you, Mayor Christie. I can see why you'd be excited to get into this building. Of course, in my mind and in many people's minds, this is one of the top 3 coolest buildings in this town, with the Blacksmith Museum and Michener House as well. So I can see why you're excited. I support the idea of the move there. I think it's a perfect fit myself. And I just wanted to make sure, and I know you said it already, but I want to make sure that there is a renewed commitment to visitor services, because I think in my time downtown there, and well, anytime really, that visitors naturally gravitate to that building. So long as you're continuing to do that, I think it's terrific, because I know we've lost a little bit of that tourism information on the highway where Chamber used to be, but as long as that continues, then I don't see why we couldn't support, I couldn't support this idea, because I think it's a terrific idea myself. Thank you.
Yeah, I can touch on that. We definitely plan to continue that. What the open hours of this space would look like, we haven't quite ironed that out yet. We wanted to see if there was interest in supporting it from council before we really went down the rabbit hole too far, because we can get very excited about things and just go on them. But my initial reaction is that it could be open 4 or 5 days a week during the high season, so the summer seasons, and then potentially like 3 days or 2 days a week, or by appointment if there's always somebody in that office space. I know a lot of similar museums or similar archival spaces, they're always closed on Mondays, but they have an archivist on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10, and it can just be set up in a way that can meet that need while also still having somebody at the front door who's answering those questions about the best restaurants in town or the best place to take your dog for a dog walk or something like that. So,
Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Just a quick question, just only because it was somewhat of a concern in the facility that you are in right now with the, keeping the archives in the basement. And then of course, the new proposal is again to house them in the basement. I guess I just want to hear some reassurance that, that you're comfortable with that location, because I don't know, at face value, it seems like somewhat concerning if it is below the water table, as you were saying. Yeah, if you just want to address that point.
sure. So we, knock on wood, we haven't flooded at the Michener House because of rain. We have flooded at the Michener House because the toilet is in the basement, which is under the water line. And so when the toilet flushes, it goes up, actually goes up and then goes into a septic tank. And that has been what's caused us 3 floods in the past. Hopefully nothing ever happens because of rain. But that's one of the reasons why the Michener House basement isn't ideal. We actually decommissioned the bathroom now, so there isn't a spot for staff or volunteers really to use to mitigate that issue, which obviously isn't a great fit for the staff and volunteers at the museum right now. But that being said, the Flatiron building, I've done a little bit of digging on that, and there hasn't been a recorded flooding of the basement there at all. But again, knock on wood. So it is definitely ideal to not have an archives in a basement or an attic. That is something that is kind of I don't want to say a standard, but just a common knowledge, I suppose. But I think if we can do it properly, which our technician has assured us we could, I don't see it being an issue for the next 5 years at least. So.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. This is exciting, and it's neat to hear your excitement. I really like that you're still partnering with Lacombe Regional Tourism as well, that they have a home. My thought, though, is around the money. I guess I'm curious, like the current lease of $27,000, who's paying that right now? Because then it says it's only a $5,000 increase to go to 36. But isn't the whole 36 an increase or an added expense to your organization?
So I think Guy is planning on stepping in quickly, and he might be able to answer that a little bit better than me. But currently the lease is split between the city of Lacombe and the county. And so they pay the lease on this building. And so the proposal is that there would only be an additional $5,000 on the annual lease as it currently stands to have all 3 levels. And I don't see him in here right now, but I know he was planning on coming in to talk after me for sure. So he might be able to focus a bit more on how that worked, because I believe the county pays the city directly and then the city just pays out the full amount each year, but I could be wrong on that, because it is something that was more for tourism than it was for heritage at this point. So
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Melissa. We appreciate your time, and your passion for looking after our history in Lacombe is very plain to see. Thank you for that. And you're certainly welcome to stick around and observe the deliberations with our manager, Lapointe, and the options that we have for the lease. So thanks again.
thanks everyone. Have a good night.
That takes us down to the request for decision portion of our agenda this evening, and the first one up continues on nicely from our last presenter. Item 5.1, the Flatiron lease options. and Manager Lapointe has joined us. The floor is yours, Guy.
Well, good evening, Mayor Creasy and Council. This evening, Council is asked to consider a request from the Lacombe and District Historical Society to extend the Flatiron Building lease through to December 31st, 2026, at a net cost of $5,000 annually to the City of Lacombe. Lacombe Regional Tourism plans to vacate, or had planned to vacate, the Flatiron Building when the lease expired at the end of this year, in an effort to transition to social media, online engagement, and mobile services operation. And of course, that means the facility is open at the moment. As Council heard from their presentation, the Lacombe and District Historical Society proposes to occupy the Flatiron Building using the basement for much needed archival storage, the main floor for dynamic exhibit space and ancillary revenue generation. The second floor calls for a shared office and boardroom with Lacombe Regional Tourism, as well as a dedicated public art gallery space. The proposal aims to advance several community benefits, including improved synergy with Lacombe Regional Tourism, promoting DART priorities such as vibrant downtown core, preserving heritage, and maintaining a unique feel and vibe in the downtown. Exposure to an expanded array of Lacombe area artifacts highlighted by public access to the Lacombe Globe Archives. Safeguarding of the Lacombe and District Historical Society's collection, and finally, new revenue potential with an expanded gift shop and/or candy store, along with fresh sponsorship opportunities. The administration is recommending Council support the Lacombe and District Historical Society request. And with that, I'm open to any questions you may have.
Thank you. I think we could use a little confirmation on the lease itself. It says that it's $5,000 to annually to the City of Lacombe. Is that shared with the county, or that is our share, or what's the deal there?
So the thought at the moment is the current lease is $27,000. It will move to 36, which is a $9,000 increase. The Historical Society is working with Lacombe Regional Tourism to secure an additional $4,000 towards the lease, the cost of the lease. So that's the net of the $5,000 afterwards, because they're basically subletting to Lacombe Regional Tourism at that point. And that $5,000 is absorbed by the city, primarily because the second floor benefits the city in particular, as opposed to the broader county.
And once again, on that same vein, the differences in cost, without getting into square footage and all the rest of it, this is a reasonable figure for the amount of space given, and similar to other downtown buildings, or?
Yeah, definitely in the same vein as other spaces. Again, the landowner had been looking for 14,000, I think it was 14,400 for the second floor, and had discounted it at one point to 12,000, and now has arrived at the number of 9,000. So there has been some discounting that's been involved with this as well.
Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I guess I was under the assumption, and that's always wrong to assume anything, but when the regional tourism was moving out of there, that they were trying to reduce their expenses by that. So by that lease amount. So I was anticipating then their ask of the city would be less, if that makes sense. So just follow me. So then, but now in essence, that ask for that lease is going to fall under the Historical Society. So it's just going to be a transition in terms of a financial obligation. So in reality, though, this is a larger ask for the Historical Society then. It's not only $5,000, it's actually the whole lease that will fall under their organization. Am I correct in that?
Absolutely. In terms of the city, the net is 5,000, but it is a larger ask from the Historical Society. Now, keep in mind that the lease is directly with the city. So there isn't actually an amount that's doled out to the Historical Society. The lease is held directly with the city. And so it's never been with tourism. And I think they erroneously assumed that it was with them. The lease is actually with the city. And so we're just switching the user at this point. at an additional cost.
Chief Gotti?
At an additional cost, but also with additional floors.
Yes.
And additional services too, I would add as well, right?
Councillor Hoekstra?
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. So since the city leases this, does the city also provide like janitorial services and everything there too? So with an added floor, is there going to be added costs in that regard as well?
Fair point. There is some maintenance that is done by the city on site. So snow clearing, if there's a light that needs to be changed, as you said, a clogged toilet, not day-to-day maintenance, but there is some routine maintenance that happens on site for sure.
Go ahead, Councillor Hoekstra.
I would like to make this motion that council agrees to extend the Flatiron Building lease from January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2026 at an additional net cost of $5,000 annually.
Okay. Councillor Connaught, was that?
I was just going to make a motion.
Very good. Councillor Ross, the individual joining us electronically sometimes gets missed out. Any input from you on this item? That was a head shake. Very good. So if there's no additional comments or questions, I will call the vote. All those in favor? Very good. That is unanimously in favor, therefore passed. And we can take advantage of the remaining free rent for this year as well, I understand.
Yes.
Next up is item 5.2. Chief Gotti for the 2021 property tax rate bylaw number 489.
Thank you. This evening before council is the recommended second and third reading of bylaw 489. We have prepared two options for you. The first is the bylaw that you gave first reading upon, and that raises approximately $15 million, 15.1 if I recall. And your budget was initially prepared on that number. Secondly, as I identified at our first reading, there was a concern, which I have confirmed, about a policy variance that occurred in the development of the bylaw that was given first reading, that under accounts for new development and uses new development to subsidize existing tax rates rather than adding to the city's tax base. Upon recognizing this concern, I contracted a third party to complete a mill rate and tax rate bylaw with city administrative staff that was compliant with the policy as well as council's past practice, or the city of Lacomb's past practice. That is before you and is recommended for second and third reading. It raises additional revenue with a total estimated property tax revenue of approximately $15.3 million. The difference we have recommended adding to your roads reserve in contemplation of the shortfall of funding for the paving maintenance that was identified to you at your May 3rd meeting. This will go a ways towards reducing that shortfall, not eliminating it, and it is compliant again with the policy. The impacts are listed there. It depends, of course, how much your property is worth, and each individual situation is going to vary from this theoretical situation that I given here. It is not unusual to see taxes assessment vary by 5% from year to year based on the new data that's incorporated by the assessor. when he incorporates previous sales data over the last year. You often hear from those that see an increase of 5%, but there is, for every one of those, there is one, a property that sees a decrease of 5%. Of course, you're less likely to hear from that individual. The bylaw that we have prepared has an average increase on if you were to take the typical $275,000 home, they're going to see a monthly increase of approximately $1.37. And a non-residential property here, we've used an example value of $525,000 is going to see approximately $8 per month. Again, we do recommend the passing of the policy compliant version that raises $15,327,972. And we've supplied motions there to effect that resolution. One minor change that I noticed here under municipal property tax, it states that in 2020, the rate is currently at 113.8% of the targeted 120%. That is not actually true. It should read in 2021, if the bylaw that we have recommended is passed, you'll be at that 113.8%. In 2020, you were actually at 112%. So this takes a small step towards that policy target of 120%. So I should say, draw your attention to, when I say policy compliant, there is this variance, even in the one we've recommended, which is that your policy states the target rate for non-residential property should be 120% of the residential tax rate. However, to do that would cause a significant shift. It hasn't been that way for my time here or anyone I've talked to. That's a target. If you were to shift to 120% in 1 year, it would significantly shift the tax burden from residential to non-residential property in 1 year. And I think that would be unfair. That would be a big surprise to commercial businesses who are already under a lot of headwinds, and an unexpected windfall for residential properties within the community that aren't expecting that. With that, I will open it to any questions about the policy variance included in the first draft of the bylaw that you gave first reading to, or the version that we're recommending second and third reading to this evening.
Councillor Connick.
Thank you, Mayor. No, I just wanted to commend our CEO for trusting his gut on this and looking into this a little further and finding that we had done this a little bit incorrectly. So I'm bringing forth this amended 2021 operating budget, and to that end, I'm prepared to make that first motion. That council amend the 2021 operating budget as described in this memo. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to be clear on this, so there's some variance in the methodology that was used to draft the initial reading. Correct. And you're suggesting that over the past decade or more, that was not the methodology that was used as it was in the Crane. Correct. Very good. And that, once again, the methodology that was used basically benefits existing taxpayers from new construction as opposed to the city increasing.
Yes, over time, it would erode your ability to provide services to the new properties that are adding to the city's demands and tax base.
Which was going to be my comment. I mean, while everybody likes to see ways of reducing taxes, I think to basically pawn those off onto new development is a pretty short-sighted way to go about that, and has to come to an end, and it's going to hamper development down the road. So I certainly am in favor of adjusting our initial first reading as was outlined by Councillor Connick. Any other input before we consider this question? financial impact of this one, I would think I would ask Coordinator Pettibone to read back the motion in its entirety, please.
Certainly, Mayor Creasy. Councillor Connick's motion was that council amend the 2021 operating budget as described in this memo.
Thank you. We're all good? See any hands? All those in favor? Thank you. Councillor Jacobson.
I move council give second reading to bylaw 489 as amended.
Thank you. Any questions with respect to second reading? All those in favor? And that is unanimous as well. Thank you. Councillor Jacobson.
I move council give third reading to bylaw 489 as presented, or as amended.
Thank you. And just as a process item, given, I'm just wondering the legalities, given that we adjusted the first reading this evening, are we still okay to do second and third readings this evening? Chief Gowdy.
So you actually just adjusted the operating budget. You are, first reading still stands of the original bylaw as read, but you are permitted to make modifications such as the mill rate, the total municipal requisition, or any other matter within the bylaw between first and second reading. So it should be all compliant to go to second and third reading this evening, should you choose so.
Very good. I just wanted that known publicly because I can see that being an issue, given that we're doing second and third reading immediately following an adjustment of a financial nature. So best to have it out for everyone to see right off the bat. So any additional input? All those in favor? I believe that was unanimous as well. Thanks, everyone. And just wondering, did Leonard Teal join us this evening?
Yes, he is there.
Very good. Our next item up is item under request for decision is item 5.3, land use bylaw amendment 400.35 for a fitness facility. Leonard Teal, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Good evening, members of council. As is, the mayor mentioned, the application or the bylaw is to add a use to the R1 residential district for a particular site that's located along 50th Avenue, just to the west of downtown. It is in response to an application being made by the prospective purchaser or new owner of the former location of the Lacombe Pentecostal Church. So the interest is to establish a dance studio in that facility and use a kind of a adaptive reuse of the building and relocate from the industrial location in the east end of Lacombe to this particular site if the application or the LUB amendment is approved. Fitness facility is definitely a fit for what they intend to do. And they intend to offer dance lessons, performing art lessons, yoga, fitness class, and some performance space that may relate to the occasional in-house performance related to all those activities. The west part of lot 30 is, which is the subject site, is located halfway between CNE Trail and the Rexall Drugs location on the north side of 50th Avenue. You can see that outlined in the air photo in pink. As I mentioned, it's a former location of a place of worship, and the intention is to look at this particular commercial use as a possible addition and adaptive reuse of that particular property. If council gives first reading, the next step would be to schedule a public hearing, and it's recommended that that be scheduled for, scroll back up, June 14th, 2021 at 5:30 p.m.
Thank you, Leonard Teal. This particular business, memory serves me correctly, went through a similar process for their existing location on Wolf Creek Drive. And was the naming the same under fitness facility in that area?
Mayor Creasy, I don't believe it was. So my understanding is they went in approximately 10 to 11 years ago under a previous bylaw. So when you look at the district they're in now and the definitions we have under the current bylaw, bylaw 400, fitness facility would certainly fit their activity.
Very good, thank you. Councillor Connick?
Thank you, Mayor Christie. Just a quick question. It says west part of lot 30. Is it, so there's an east part? Am I missing something? Like, to me, it's like one lot. I don't quite get the naming of it. It's just a minor thing.
Yes, Mayor Creasy, the legality of this, this is actually it's titles by description, which is really not allowed anymore, but literally up until about 1995, you on the map, it would draw a large block of land called Lot 30, and then in the titles that were issued to two different property owners would literally describe you own the west 50 feet and someone else owns the other east 50 feet. And that's what you're seeing in this particular case.
Okay, thanks.
So not that I expect you to be aware of every lot in Lacombe, but is this something that perhaps the older sections of town suffer from this improper naming throughout, or is this a relatively rare issue?
Mayor Creasy, yes, I wish I could say it was rare. Some of them get really, really, really long. Generally speaking, the older the title, the older area of the city, that's where you'll find these. You'll also find them, however, in recently annexed areas because they may have been used in a rural setting prior to being added to the city's jurisdiction. Anything new like Trinity Crossing area would not have titles of this nature.
Right. And is there an expectation at land titles that this type of unique naming situation be rectified as we move forward, or is it just a grandfathered in process? What's
Mayor Creasy, it'll be with us until this lot is, and its neighbor is consumed in a new plan of subdivision and a new format using a map indicating a lot block and plan is issued that literally consumes that existing parcel.
okay? So this isn't something that council needs to give the direction for to have rectified at this particular time. That will come over time as development changes in the area.
Yes, Mayor Creasy, if there's subdivision involved, and this one does fall under land titles jurisdiction.
Thank you. Councillor Hibbs?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Just a comment, actually, I do appreciate the fact that this is being proposed to be a discretionary item and rather than a permitted. I thought that was good. Thank you for that. I don't have any concerns with, with the proposal. I do think that we're going to hear from the community, so I'm glad that we're obviously going to have a public hearing for that. And if I might be jumping the gun a little bit, but I will propose that council give first reading to bylaw 400.35 as presented.
Thank you. Councillor Gullickson?
I was just going to make the motion.
Very good. Anyone else need any clarification or have input on this item? All those in favor? Thank you. And along with that, there's an expectation for a public hearing. Councillor Gullickson?
Thank you. I'll move that council schedule a public hearing for bylaw 400.35 at 5:30 p.m. on an alternate, what's the date for that? Or is it on
14th.
June 14th? I didn't have it on this one.
So with respect to the public hearing, any input? All those in favor? Unanimous as well, thank you. And I see Director Juke is waiting in the wings electronically there. We have item 5.4, the dry cooler request for proposal results. Director Juke, would you care to take us through this item, please?
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Administration is returning the matter of the dry cooler capital project at the Lacombe Memorial Center to you this evening for awarding a contract to supply and install the unit compatible with existing systems. By way of review, the Lacombe Memorial Center has a long-standing problem with excessive heat in the rooms during high attendance events in fall, winter, and spring. These are periods when the air conditioning unit is shut down to protect it from outside temperatures. Administration had reissued a request for proposal or RFP this spring for the supply and install of the dry cooler, one that could integrate with the existing air conditioning unit and the overall HVAC system at the LMC. Proponents were also asked to include roof reinforcement as stipulated in the engineering report that the city commissioned in 2020. As part of the RFP process, administration hosted a mandatory site visit on April 6th, and by the closing date, the city had received 5 proposals. ICOM Mechanical Limited provided the lowest priced proposal at $159,258, and administration is recommending the contract be awarded to this company. The ICOM proposal itself is available to council through the in-camera section of the agenda tonight. And just some final notes. The city is unexpectedly benefiting from market volatility due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The budget for this project had been increased last December by more than $113,000, but proposal pricing was across the board lower than expected. Another factor reducing costs is Congodine's recommendation for a simplified roof reinforcement that will allow use of existing drains. And a comment about total project estimate and funding sources. With a 5% contingency, this contract award and prior expenditures, the total project cost is expected to be about $174,000. Application has been made by the city for capital support from Lacombe County at 7.96% or about $14,000, making the net cost to the city for this project up at approximately $160,000, which will be MSI funded. And with that, I'll field any questions that the council may have.
Thank you, Director Duke. So I don't see a lot of hands up, so I will start. First off, extremely pleased to see this finally go through. I'm hoping it does. It seems quite a shame to have a, what was at the time, about a $12 million facility that suffers from some extremely aggravating room temperature changes in there, and obviously some design work that was not accounted for from the initial build. So I'm very happy to see this get addressed and look forward to a comfortable room for larger groups to gather there without overheating, regardless of the time of the year. In saying that, I am concerned with the selection of companies. I have nothing to say against the one that has been proposed, simply because of their bid amount. However, given that I do sign checks, I looked into our current situation there and see that Johnson Controls was kind of in the mid-pack. And given that they are responsible for overall maintenance of that system in the building, while it's odd that they are perhaps not even closer to the lower end, in my opinion, the $6,000 or $7,000 difference is not enough to warrant going to an alternate supplier. I have nothing to do whatsoever with Johnson Controls. However, that's a very complicated system that's in there. I remember when we allocated some funds towards a building management system there, and I just foresee there's just a potential for issues when we bring in yet another contractor, and I'm not even sure if they look after integrating this item into that system or if in fact that falls back on Johnson. But I think the potential for conflict here outweighs the differential in price. And I think that's something that we should consider. A little unusual for me not wanting to go with the lowest price, but in this instance, I I've outlined the reasons why. Silence falls over the room there. Councillor Gullikson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I think that it probably could be integrated without too much trouble, with a little bit of experience I've had with these kind of units. But I agree with the mayor, it would be nice if there was all the same, the installer was also did the maintenance, it probably would make it a little easier. But was that addressed as part of their contract? That it had to integrate with the existing system?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Gullikson. Yes, integration and I guess it's called commissioning with the existing system is part of the contract.
Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. So this maintenance contract that we have currently with Johnson Controls, is that something we renew every few years, or is that just something? Like, I don't have a problem with, I agree with the mayor, but I don't want to switch to Johnson and then 2 years down the road, we switch to somebody else entirely different, or how does that work?
So Johnson Controls is our go-to for mechanical work at the LMC, and I believe that they do the substantial bulk of the work at the pool as well. So we are using them, and they are also used by many municipalities.
Right, but are they under contract for a fixed term, or is it just, we just go to them?
We just go to them. I believe that we get quotes on, and it could be an annual basis. And sorry, I actually have to say, I actually don't know for sure. I don't believe it's like Stantec where we have, an agreed upon amount of work that's coming their way every year. I'd have to get back to you on that one.
And on an unrelated item, they also do a substantial amount of work at the Lacombe Police Service building as well.
There as well, yeah.
And as I said, in my opinion, that in and of itself is not necessarily the reason. I just think to introduce another contractor into a system that's already in place is far different than creating a new building with a new system. That would be a far different issue in selecting the lowest bid. But given the differential here and the potential for conflict, and that $7,000 could be added so quickly in issues down the road, I think we're inviting the potential for issues. Councillor Connick.
Sure, I'm on board. I also move that council approves a contract award to Johnson Controls for the proposed price of $166,500 plus GST for supply and install a dry cooler at the Lacombe Memorial Center.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that lowest bid is usually selected. Is there anything legally that prevents us from considering other options?
No, in the case of an RFP, you do have discretion. If it was an invitation to tender, you do have a legal obligation to choose the lowest price. In this particular instance, and actually in one that I'm going to discuss later on when we talk about the RFP for this very room, I think that some of those factors that you've identified absolutely do outweigh the lowest price bid. It is difficult administratively, though, to carry in a recommendation for anything less than the lowest bid when contractors who are qualified, who are able to do the job, are saying that they can do it. So I would have no concern about going forward with that, whatever it is, 4% increase in price to get the assurance that there's going to be a high level of integration with the existing systems and a high knowledge of what those existing systems are meant to do. So
very good, and certainly don't think that this was a motion against council. It was just, I quite frankly, I would be disappointed or against administration. I mean, I would be quite disappointed if you brought anything other than the lowest price forward. But for the reasons outlined, I think that this one is worth considering. So thank you for that. Any additional input? All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you, Councillor Gullikson. So noted. That's carried. And next up, we have our Director of Community Services, Director Piche. Item 5.5, the Municipal Election Bylaw 484. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy and Council. So before Council tonight, this evening, is first reading of Bylaw 484, the Municipal Elections Bylaw. Along with the bylaw, there are some resolutions that administration is bringing to Council for consideration. These resolutions will determine dates of advance votes, opportunities for voting, and returning officers. Bylaw 484 is an updated version of the previous municipal election bylaw number 426. The updates that have been made to this bylaw are the dates and times to reflect the 2021 election requirements as per the Local Authority Election Act. Allowance for special ballots for those who are incapable of attending the LMC to vote. Updates to the advanced institutional and those with physical disabilities section to reflect the current legislation. Voter identification has been updated to comply with the current legislation of the Local Authority Elections Act. There's a post-vote procedure that includes auxiliary and special ballot boxes to be consistent with the legislation. There's the election material after the vote has to be kept longer now for 12 weeks versus the previous 6 weeks. And then there are some changes to the bylaw to clean up some of the wording and terminology. The resolutions, though, that we are asking Council to consider this evening, in addition to this first reading of the bylaw, is that we do make the recommendation to have 3 advance votes. 2 of them are for the general public, and 1 of them is for persons with disabilities. The 2 general public votes are planned to be on October 1st and October 12th. The advance vote for persons with physical disabilities will occur on October 7th. However, those are to be held in the home of the residents who pre-register by October 1st. Also, another resolution is to allow for institutional votes on election day to be held at the Royal Oak Village, the Lacombe Seniors Lodge, and the Lacombe Hospital and Care Centre. Another recommendation is to allow for the attendance of 2 deputy returning officers at the residence of an elector by the prearranged appointments on October 7th. And this, again, to accommodate persons with disabilities. One more recommendation is to allow special ballots by application to be returned on October 18th, 2021. These are the mail-out ballots, voting ballots, and people must register for those by October 1st, 2021. Again, this is to accommodate persons who cannot attend the voting stations at the LMC and those who may have concerns about people attending their residence. When the province was changing this legislation on special ballots, it was because of the idea of COVID was still possibly a concern at that time. Another recommendation for a resolution is to allow for a joint election with Wolf Creek School Division number 72 and St. Thomas Aquinas Roman Catholic Separate Regional Division number 38, should their boards require such services. And finally, the last 2 resolutions will be to appoint a returning officer and a secondary returning officer for the 2021 election. If there are any questions at this time, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Director Piche. Anyone have any questions? Councillor Connick, any questions for Director Piche regarding bylaw 484?
No, I just found it curious. I leave it to the provincial government to bring in some changes that result in 8 motions. But anyways, that's all.
I was just going to say some of those are actual decisions that we have to make prior to June 30th for our election moving forward.
Director Piche, one of the items that falls under 484, I don't recall the section, but was for voting procedures. In the past, we've used electronic polling stations.
Yes.
And just so I can say, I asked the question, is this due to financial considerations, or why do we use them? It seems odd to me, why aren't we putting local people to work rather than renting units from outside the province?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, the technology is there where it's able to be accounted for quite easily. The auditing procedures are in place. Any type of questions about the process is able to be explained, rectified, and shown through that. When you add that human element in, there are probably more chances for error of the ballot counting. Also, you're also looking at the end of a 15 to 18 hour long day by the time you are counting. So there are chances of a greater human error there. So it really doesn't come down to a financial aspect. The machines themselves, I want to say it's around, I want to say about 7,000 to 8,000. Legislative Coordinator Pettibone would have the actual number in place of how much it costs for the voting machines. But it probably is better to have that audit trail.
Okay, thank you. CEO?
I think the other thing is, although there has been incidents recently where people have questioned the veracity of machines, the counting machines, generally there is a acceptance that the automated counters are going to be less prone to error and certainly perceived to be less prone to any sort of outside influence. In a community the size of Lacombe, the chances that if you were to hire some local people to do the counting, the chances that one of them have some level of perceived connection to one or more of the candidates could cause some people to have the perception that there's a chance for undue influence, especially when it is a change from the city's past practice when the automated machines have been used. And so I think that perception is something to consider as well, even though I don't actually believe that's a bona fide concern that people would miscount to manipulate a local election in the city of Lacombe. The perception could be there.
Okay, as I said, the reason I asked is primarily financial. I think there's a misconception that it's kind of a A or B situation where I think it's safe to say that for the amount that is spent on these machines could easily be used up many times over in labor. Is that a fair?
Just let me make sure I understand what you're saying. I expect the machines are more expensive than to do it manually.
Ooh, that hurts. Really?
Is that accurate, Diane?
I do have the total here of what it will cost. It's about $10,000, $10,300 for the machines for the use of the election.
Now that includes.
We would have to hire about 20 more staff if we are to have ballot counters.
I would say we are not prepared to do right now a comparative. We don't have a financial comparative assessment of what it would cost to look at it manually versus the machines. I don't believe that it is a financial. I don't think that the reason the city has chosen it or that other municipalities choose it is necessarily a financial means, because when I think several $1,000s hires many people for many hours, I would think there's a manual option that could be done cheaper, but there would be that perception of the change from the past and potentially more prone to error.
I guess I just find it troubling then under that, because I was led to believe that this was a less expensive option. I mean, as far as past procedure for the past 110 years or so, we've done it manually, and then all of a sudden we've done electronically. And even if they were the same, I would suggest that it is in our best interest to put a few local people to work. If it's even costing more to do this electronically, I'm very much not in favor of it. That's the reason I brought it up. So I was confused the last time that I discussed it with Director Piche. I was under the impression that by the time we accounted for manual printing of ballots and the staffing costs and all of the differential between electronic and not, it helped quell my concerns of why we were choosing an electronic method.
Sorry, let me be clear. I think the comparison of the labor costs versus the machines are more expensive. That's why I kind of hedged and said, I don't think we have the data to do a true comparison, because there are all those other costs associated with the ballots. And I think that the total cost is probably comparable, but the labor, strictly labor to rental of the equipment, I can't see the labor possibly arriving to that value. So what we could do is do that analysis and send that out for council's information. We don't have it today, but we can certainly find that out for you.
Thank you. Councillor Connick?
So just for my own clarification, you said, Mayor Creasy, that we've been doing this, like the last 2-3 elections had all been electronic.
At least two, yeah.
So, but you seem to suggest it wasn't, or am I saying, or did?
No, I just said for the last 120 years, about 110 of them, we've counted them manually, and 10 we've done electronically. So I think there's a fair bit of history that would suggest that it worked pretty good for over a century. And there again, all things being equal, if it was even money, I would prefer to put people to work here as opposed to send it to the funds to a big corporation elsewhere. That's all. That's the only point I'm making. But there are some other factors that are involved as opposed to just comparing those two items, which is fine. Lots of hands going up over here. Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I just have a question. So when it comes to the ballot, I'm assuming that sample is kind of the idea of what we would look like. We're looking at if we're having a ballot. What happens in the case of, say, one of those categories being spoiled? Like, for example, under councillors, it would be, choose up to 6. What if someone were to choose 7? Does that make the whole ballot spoiled, or is it just that category?
I will have to defer to Director Piche for that answer.
Thank you, Councillor Hibbs. Actually, I've been going through a lot of training over the last few months, and that was just one of the topics of our last training session. So the spoiled ballots, the way it works is that if somebody unintentionally spoils their ballot, so they do write in 7 versus 6, they can go back to the table that they received their ballot from, tell them that they've spoiled their ballot accidentally, and request a new one. And then that goes into a separate bin or a separate folder, and it's counted at the end of the day so that there is like a reconciliation of all the ballots that have been handed out versus the ones that are in the that go within the tabulator to be counted.
So that's good information, but I'm expecting that Councillor Hibbs is more referring to for someone that doesn't realize that they have perhaps made an error on their ballot. Does that eliminate the entire ballot for that individual, or only that particular category? Categories being municipal, Senate, school board, those types of things, or is it the entire ballot that is spoiled?
It's just that category.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's good. Thank you.
Chief Gotti?
I did want to make just one comment. Councillor Hibbs had said, the Schedule A, that's the example ballot. That is the current example that is available for use. It is likely that your actual ballot is going to be much longer and have additional questions, and it will be a larger ballot this year than has previously been seen for local elections in Alberta.
Absolutely. I just meant that you have the different categories, whether you have mayor separate, you have councillors separate, and then you have, assuming it's applicable, school board trustee separate, and then whatever else. But just as my concern was, by doing all these on the same ballot, like if you were to mess up in one area inadvertently even and not catch it, does that now spoil your entire ballot? And that would be a real shame. But if we're being told that that is not the case, that you can mess up on, say, the councillors, but your mayoral vote is still valid, your trustee vote is still valid, the Senate, I know that's probably going to be a question, is valid, and that allays my concerns.
And I will admit, I'm getting fed some information here that it says that the machines will actually flag the ballot and then point it out to the staff and request or ask the question if they want another chance to fix it.
Councillor Hibbs.
So given that information, that actually is a point in, going the electronic route, especially because we do elect councillors at large, and it's very easy to do 7 instead of 6, for example, on a large field. I would think that would be a consideration. I don't know how much of a consideration. I don't know how often that happened, for example, in the last election, and I don't know if we even have access to that information. Probably not. But I have worked as someone who's counted ballots in the past, obviously not for a municipal election, but for a provincial, nomination or federal election, et cetera, and it is, I guess potentially surprising at how easy it is for people to make mistakes, and there are unfortunately quite a few spoiled ballots, and sometimes they're intentional, clearly intentional, but so often it's unintentional, and I think we would probably be doing our community I would argue we could potentially be doing our community a service by having that fail-safe for them so that they are getting their vote counted the way that they intended to have it counted. Just a thought.
Councillor Connick.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. I make mention here within this memorandum, the potential for referendum questions to be on there that the provincial government wants to have answered and so forth. If we as a council wanted to add a plebiscite question or something along those lines, do we have until September 21 to do that as well, or what's the thought there?
Sorry, I'm just going to have to look that one up. I believe we have until June 30th to come up with those questions. It doesn't actually say in our legislation. I will have to get back to you on that, Councillor Connick. I'm sorry. I will find that out for you, and I'll make sure I get that sent out to you.
Yeah, if you could, because I'm kind of mulling one over a potential question we might want to ask of our citizens, so that'd be, thank you.
Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I guess my question would be, can we proceed with these motions and potentially first reading and still be getting this information before our next reading so that we can make a more informed decision going forward, because we have some information you're going to have to come back with us by the sounds of it.
Yes, we certainly can. We can bring back information as to the cost comparison. We will bring back information as to the process for a municipal plebiscite type question or a municipal question to be included, what the timeline for the process would be for second and third reading.
Thank you. And given I was the individual that, as far as the cost comparison, please do not make that a detailed review. A fairly high level one will suffice. Because I think from the information that was put forward tonight, I think it'll be perhaps less of an issue for this election than what it has been for some of us in the past. Councillor Hibbs.
Mayor Creasy, I would go ahead then and start making that first motion. But just before I do that, I do want to say that I appreciate that we're doing advanced votes, which we have not done in the past that I'm aware of.
We have.
We have, okay, well, they haven't been very much advertised then, because I know at the last election, I had a lot of people that were quite upset that are things that are like workers that are away, and they did not feel like they had an adequate ability to vote in the last election. So I don't know, maybe the way that the dates are looked at, because a lot of people are gone, say 2 weeks, and then, 2 weeks back. I just know I had quite a few people saying that they were unable to participate in the last municipal election because of the way that we do voting. So I apologize if we did do some sort of advanced voting, but yeah, so anyways, just making that comment. I'll move that council direct administration to provide 3 advanced votes for the City of Lacomb's 2021 general municipal election of municipal councillors and or school board trustees.
Councillor Connacht?
Yeah, further to Councillor Hibbs' comments, I think it stemmed from the fact that they were, the advanced votes weren't far enough in advance in some instances, I think was something I had heard in the last election.
A week ahead of it or something.
Yeah, they're a week ahead of the actual vote, which didn't make a lot of sense to a lot of people, because a lot of the snowbirds, for example, take off sooner. So yeah, I think there should be some consideration going forward as to when those exact dates are. Thank you.
So Director Piche, that might be one more item for information for our consideration for next vote as well. So see if we can get perhaps a more appropriate time frame with the pre-election votes. Thank you. Anything else? So for first reading, all those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. And Director Piche, you did such a great job with that one. You can continue on with the RFP recommendation for City Hall, please.
I'm sorry, Mayor Creasy, there's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 other motions.
We just did them all at once. Thank you for that reminder. We spent a little too much time discussing, not enough time voting. My apologies. Councillor Connacht.
I'll move the second motion. The council designates 3 institutional voting stations on election day for the City of Lacomb's 2021 general municipal election at Royal Oak, Lacombe Seniors Lodge, Lacombe Hospital Care Center, to accommodate electors confined to a treatment center resident and supporting living facilities, self-contained housing, or lodge accommodation.
Thank you.
So,
Councillor.
thank you, Mayor Creasy. So what did Councillor Hibbs vote, motion? Did you do first reading? Did I hear that? Like, did you jump to number 5?
No, just one.
Yeah, whereas we voted on first reading, your words were, so
It just keeps getting better and better, doesn't it?
yeah, so I'm just, because so then I started going, did I miss what Councillor Hibbs said? And so I just voted blindly,
Fair
which is
enough.
bad. So we voted on this first one on advanced votes, is that correct?
Well, given that there's some confusion there, I think that we need to perhaps consider redoing it. Coordinator Pettibone, in a situation like this, what is the proper road forward so that we can be certain that there's no inconsistencies in the vote?
I think Councillor Hibbs's motion was read as required by Councillor Hibbs, and you can simply just re-vote on her motion, since perhaps the last vote was a confused one just based on the incorrect repetition of first reading, because it's still on the floor, frankly.
Very good. And just for clarification, are all, what was there, 8 of these? They're going to be all voted on each of 3 times?
No, just once each.
Okay. Very good. So that was confusing when I said first reading. So in order to confirm the vote, I'm going to have Coordinator Pettibone read back the first motion to us, and we're going to vote again just for clarification.
So Mayor Creasy and Council, Councillor Hibbs made the motion that Council direct administration to provide 3 advance votes for the City of Lacomb's 2021 general municipal election of municipal councillors and or school board trustees.
Very good, thank you. My apologies, Council. We're going to do one more time. All those in favor? Very good. Councillor, who was up next?
I made this.
Councillor Connick?
Yes, sir.
Please go ahead. You've read it in once, Councillor, Coordinator Pettibone.
And Councillor
Please.
Connick.
Second one, please.
Certainly, Councillor Connick made the motion that Council designate 3 institutional voting stations on election day for the City of Lacomb's 2021 general municipal election at Royal Oak Village, Lacombe Senior Citizens Lodge, Lacombe Hospital and Care Center, to accommodate electors confined to a treatment center, resident in a supportive living facility, self-contained housing, or lodge accommodation.
Thank you. Any additional comments? All those in favor? Very good. Number 3, Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'll make the motion that council provides for the attendance of 2 deputies at the residence of an elector by prearranged appointment on or about October 7th, 2021, between the hours of 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. to accommodate persons with disabilities.
Very good. I see no hands. All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Councillor Hoekstra.
We'll just go around the circle. That council provides the special ballots by application on or before 4:30 p.m. October 1st, 2021 via telephone, email, or writing to the returning officer, including information required per the Act, with outer envelopes to be received by the returning officer no later than 4:30 p.m. on October 18th, 2021.
It would be interesting receiving envelopes via telephone, but I appreciate the sentiment. Anyone? All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Councillor Jacobson.
Are we on number 6?
5.
Number
5.
Didn't we do? Oh, okay.
No,
We got to do it one twice.
Right. That council gives first reading to municipal election bylaw 484 is presented.
Thank you. I see no additional input. All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Councillor Hibbs?
Do you want to do Ross?
Yeah, this
Councillor
is
Ross?
Councillor Ross in the game.
Okay, Councillor Ross, did you have the next motion for us?
No, go ahead, sorry.
Councillor Hibbs.
That council directs administration to conduct a joint election by entering into an election services agreement to conduct the 2021 municipal election jointly with Wolf Creek School Division number 72 and with St. Thomas Aquinas Roman Catholic Separate Regional Division number 38, should their boards require such services.
Thank you. Anyone else? All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Councillor Connick.
Oh, I got a good one. The council appoints Diane Pichet, Director of Corporate Services, as returning officer for the City of Lacombe 2021 general municipal election.
I think this one probably deserves a little further discussion. Anyone? Very good. All those in favor? That was certainly unanimous. Director Pichet, we appreciate the extra efforts that you put in for these types of special projects. That's important for our community, and we certainly appreciate your guidance. So thank you.
One left.
I don't see any hands. Councillor Gullickson.
Sure, go around the table. That council appoints Jennifer Peterson, Corporate and Protective Services Executive Assistant, as substitute returning officer for the City of Lacombe 2021 general municipal election.
Certainly appropriate to have a backup, and I imagine a requirement of the bylaw, or of the statute, rather. No additional input. All those in favor? Very good, and that was unanimous as well. Thank you. I believe that is actually all of them this time, as opposed to just one like I did the first go around. And next up, some engineering services items. We've got Manager Mitchell with us this evening in regards to, I've actually jumped ahead to the last time, but we'll give Director Piche a short break here and we'll move on to the municipal stimulus program funding update for Highway 12. Manager Mitchell, the floor is yours.
You're muted.
Can't hear you.
Apologies. When you have three devices connected to the same system, sometimes you hit the wrong button. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Mayor Creasy and Council. Before Council tonight is an update on the municipal stimulus program, which I'll refer to often as MSP, which provides which includes construction of the snow storage facility in East Side Rec area, which was originally referred to as the off-leash dog park, and the Highway 12 infrastructure improvements. The design for the snow storage facility and rec area is complete, and I will be receiving the tender package for final review and release tomorrow. Due to the increased truck traffic to the lagoons generated by snow clearing, a minimum of 90 meters of road repaving along 34th Street, directly adjacent to the entrance of the snow dump, has also been added to this contract. A 1 kilometer section of this road was identified for repaving in the next 3 to 4 years in Tetra Tech's recent road analysis, which Director Thompson presented to Council last week. So if there are any remaining MSP grant funding available once all these projects are tendered, it can be used to extend the paving included on this project. Preliminary design is complete for the Highway 12 infrastructure project, which highlights issues with the underground utilities, specifically the sanitary sewer and storm mains in Highway 12. This was not entirely unanticipated, as administration had identified this as a risk to be investigated when reviewing this project with Council last fall. The storm main is in mostly fair to good condition, but there were 9 locations identified as needing repairs prior to paving. These will be performed with an open cut method. The sanitary sewer is in fair to poor condition, with many localized areas of very poor condition. The vitrified clay pipe is brittle, and open trench excavations and repairs are likely to result in further damage to the main. For that reason, administration recommends the installation of a cured in place pipe, or CIPP, liner next year. This is a trenchless installation where a resin-soaked liner is pulled from manhole to manhole and then filled with water to expand it and activate the resin. The result is a structurally sound pipe within a pipe with an expected life of 40 or more years. This solution will address all the structural issues in the existing pipe, but it will not fix any areas where the pipe has sagged. When a pipe sags, the low point always remains partially full of effluent. This reduces the capacity of the main and can lead to blockages if material settles in low areas. This can be fixed with regular flushing. There are many areas where the sags are impacting the existing pipe. However, Stantec has recently completed a model update for the city's sanitary sewer, and currently this pipe has more capacity than is required. Therefore, the sags are not anticipated to impact the overall operation of the sanitary sewer for at least 20 years. The estimated cost for the pipe liner is about $400,000, but administration is recommending that it be installed next year. This is due to the fact that CIPP is in high demand nationally right now due to infrastructure stimulus funding that's happening nationally, material shortages due to COVID, and higher PVC prices overall. Because this is being recommended for next year, it is not included in the cost estimates for the Highway 12 infrastructure improvements funded by the MSP grant. It should be noted that by delaying the liner, there is a risk that one or more of the very poor sections of the sanitary main may fail prior to the installation of the liner next year. However, administration weighed this against the risk of not being able to complete the project by the grant deadline of December 31st and is recommending proceeding with work that can be completed by local forces with readily available materials. Another risk that should be noted for this project is that this area is redeveloping, and the city gets requests for approximately 1 to 2 new service lines each year. In addition, several of the existing sanitary services to the homes are also in poor condition. These issues will likely result in the need to cut into the repaved road several times per year to install new services or complete service repairs. The road and deep utility recommendations that have been recommended as part of the Highway 12 infrastructure improvements will not reset the life cycle of this road. They will simply extend it by approximately 15 years. At that time, a complete replacement of the municipal utilities and services and reconstruction of the road is recommended. This is estimated to cost in the range of $10 to $15 million. This will be similar to the Main Street project that took place in downtown in 2016-2017. That project took a year to plan and 2 years to construct with significant stakeholder involvement. A project of this magnitude should be done as a utility replacement project and consider the configuration of the whole 50th Avenue corridor. It will also severely impact many of the old growth trees that grow along Highway 12. And as we recently got feedback from the community, these are important to the community. For this reason, administration recommends the city plan for a full replacement program in the Highway 12 between 2036 and 2041, and that any asset management planning for trees provide specific recommendations for this corridor. Administration is also recommending that the water main at the intersection of Highway 12 and 2A be replaced under this grant funding. Sorry, my battery's running low. Here we go. The existing cast iron water main in the intersection has reached the end of its useful life. Numerous breaks occurred in 2019 and the spring of 2020, resulting in costly service interruptions to downtown businesses and traffic interruptions at one of the busiest intersections in Lacombe. Preliminary investigations have been completed for this scope of work, but the detailed design was postponed until the condition and cost estimates for the remaining work on Highway 12 could be completed. Now that administration has determined there are sufficient funds to complete both scopes of work, detailed design and tendering will proceed over the next 6 weeks for construction completion by the end of the year. Administration has prepared an updated cost estimate for each of the projects highlighted tonight. This can be found in the financial implications section of this memo on page 5. The total of the current cost estimates is approximately $60,000 lower than the MSP grant funding. Again, this does not include the cost for the sanitary liner, which will be included for consideration in the 2022 budget. Once the project is tendered and actual costs are received, the scope of concrete replacement along Highway 12 and road replacement or road repaving on 34th Street adjacent to the snow dump site will be adjusted to ensure the full MSP grant is utilized. In order to fast track the award and construction of these projects, I'm requesting that Council authorize a variance to the purchasing policy to authorize administration to award projects to the lowest qualifying bidders, provided that their combined value does not exceed the MSP funding amount of $1,662,384. And I would open the floor to any questions at this time.
Thank you, Manager. We appreciate, Manager Mitchell, rather, we appreciate you taking us through that item. Just so that I'm not off track, for the item here that's labeled 50th Avenue storm repairs and asphalt overlay for $664,000. So that is the storm repairs. That's to pull the fiberglass liner only.
No, so the storm repairs are going to be open cuts, and there are 9 specific locations. That's a concrete pipe. The sanitary sewer is the lining, and that one will be performed next year, and that's the cost estimate of $400,000 that has not been included in this estimate.
Okay, and how strong is the risk of not having that liner, which will provide a little bit of structural assistance prior to it being ran over with vibrating rollers and whatnot through the construction phase?
So that definitely was considered. The sanitary sewer line is approximately under the center line of the road, where the storm line, which will be dug up, is on the north parking, in the north parking lane. So there's, approximately 7+ meters separation between the two utilities. And then the sanitary sewer itself is 3 meters plus of cover underneath the road. So there'll be minimal impacts from the paving and from the storm main to the actual sanitary sewer. In regards to its current condition, I got opinions from two different engineering firms on this main, because it is an important one here in town, and we recognize the importance of this corridor through town. Both of them basically said that this is a crystal ball. It was probably in very similar condition last year to what it is this year. In the grand scheme of things, 1 year is not significant in the life of a 50 to 75-year-old main, but the possibility is there. So it's hard to quantify the exact risk.
And you had suggested that in the future, perhaps in 36 or somewhere, we'd be looking at a $12 to $15 million upgrade, and that was for this same area on 50th Avenue to replace, basically, for all intents and purposes, all of the underground utilities.
Correct. Yeah, we'd look at all of the underground utilities, rebuilding the road. Any at that time, we'd also consider anything that we might want to change, like separate sidewalks or adding turning lanes, that kind of thing. If we're doing a full shebang, we'd do a design to plan for the next 75 years for this road in Macomb.
Sure. So I'm just trying to get at the trade-off here. Basically, we're going to considering spending $660,000 to buy us 15, 20 years, perhaps somewhere in there, and postpone a major outlay. The downside being, it sounds like we've got one or two or three new water services going in. So this will be dug up kind of annually. So it's either do it all and pay the big money, or limp through for a decade and a half at substantially less money.
Correct. Yes. So I will put the caveat out there that $600,000 this year and an additional $400,000 next year. So about $1 million will buy us an extra 15 years of life on this road and time to plan for the full replacement and any changes.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarification. Chief Gotti?
And I think it's the full replacement of the mains and services. The other issue that we have right now is because of the age of some of the properties adjacent. Even if you replace the services today, there is a good chance that you'll see redevelopment of some of those properties in the coming 15 to 20 years. And so some of those redevelopments may require new services, even if they were replaced today, due to upsizing needs or that sort of thing.
Councillor Hoekstra?
I'll make that motion that, thanks, Mayor Creasy, that council authorizes the variance to its purchasing policy to permit administration to tender and award the municipal stimulus program projects to the lowest qualifying bidders on the condition the combined bid values total less or equal to the MSP funding amount, $1,662,384.
So, due to the unique wording of that, in a nutshell, we have no control over what the bids will be. I'm just curious, Chief Gotti, what's going on here? Why?
It's a timing thing. We think that if we have to wait for the bids and then have a full analysis and bring it back for council, that it will start to run into the end of the season.
Very good.
It's just a matter of timing.
Perfect explanation. Thank you. Councillor Konik?
Is there a danger then that we could actually see bids more than this, and then we're like having to cut back on scope of work, or is it, maybe we're putting it out there, it won't happen, I suppose, but.
there is always a danger that they come in higher, but you will have the opportunity, if they do come in higher, as long as it's within a reasonable range, to modify the scope of work in some way to make sure it comes in on budget.
Hence the reason for the cap.
Yes.
Okay. Clear as mud now. With respect to Councillor Hoekstra's motion then, any additional input? All those in favor? That is passed unanimously. I believe that is the second last one. I passed over. Director Piche is with us still for the item number 5.6, City Hall renovation and upgrades and the RFP associated with it. Director Piche.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So before council tonight, administration is seeking approval to award the construction contract to Savemi Construction Limited for the City Hall renovation project. As part of the 2021 capital budget, renovations for the council chambers and the downstairs washrooms were approved. The allocated budget was $320,000, which included the council chambers, the bathrooms, and replacement sewer line for the City Hall building, from the City Hall building to 56th Avenue. And then there was also $20,000 for furniture. The breakdown of costs for these items to be repaired or renovated is $100,000 for the sewer line replacement, $40,000 for internal sewer line, and then $200,000 for the bathroom renovations and the council chambers renovations. Administration posted an RFP on the Alberta Purchasing Connection that closed on April 30th. There were 7 proposals that were received, and the scoring criteria included the work plan and schedule to complete the project, references and experience, how they would accommodate the staff and public, seeing that the building will remain open, their safety management system, how they will incorporate local features or history into their design boards, and then any other value-added options or services that they could offer. The budget was not a factor in the scoring of the submissions, as we provided what the allotted budget was right in the RFP, with the anticipation that the proponents would stay within that allotted budget. However, when we finished scoring the submissions, Scott Builders was the preferred choice, but they were already $63,000 over our set amount in the RFP when looking at their preliminary budget. This could not be overlooked. I did double check with Scott, thinking that maybe they were including the internal sewer line replacement. However, I was assured that these amounts did not include that, and that was only for the investigation portion of it and not the replacement. So Savemi Construction, who came in second, met all of the criteria and provided the budget schedule of $200,000. The submissions are available in the council, available to council in the in-camera section of our website. The city has not worked with Savemi before, therefore I had a look into their references and I spoke to some of their previous customers. And I have to say they do have some very loyal and happy customers. All of them said that they would use them in an instant again. For that reason, administration requests that council approves awarding the construction contract to Savemi Construction for the City Hall renovation project. If there's any questions, I'm happy to take them at this time.
Thank you, Director Piche. Chief Gowdy.
So certainly a different set of circumstances than our earlier discussion about lower versus second lowest bids that we talked about. It is a larger differential, and in this case, there's not the direct connection. The reason that we had administratively still felt more comfortable with Scott Builders originally is because of our past working history with them. We know that they will bring the project in on time. Although $60,000 is significant, administratively, our fear is that if the project is not properly managed, the optics and trust impact with a potential new council who's expecting to be sworn in a brand new renovated chamber, who's then told, well, actually we're behind or over budget or there's some unforeseen thing. There's a loss in confidence that could occur. And so for us, the Scott Builders bid actually does make us more comfortable because of that past working knowledge. However, when we did our investigation, there is nothing that I can say about SVEMI that would give me additional concern beyond the fact that we have not worked with them before. And so that's why we have carried the recommendation for SVEMI construction with a little bit of apprehension about the capacity. Again, not because of their proposal being lacking in anything, just because of our lack of experience with this company.
So, given that concern, I'm not necessarily sure I share the same fears, simply because I don't think it's that big a deal to be sworn in a facility that has been set up to accommodate business elsewhere, and that's the only reason. I would prefer for the new council that it was here. Might not be the end of the world, but I mean, are the penalties built into the contract such that they are painfully aware of the consequences of not completing chambers on time?
We haven't proposed any contract at this point. We're just at the award process here.
Okay.
But we can make sure that we do.
Councillor Connick?
Thank you, Mayor Chrissy. I spent a lot of time thinking about this one, and I don't think I can support the motion that's presented today for a couple of reasons. One, I would rather support, I know Scott's does work province-wide, but I would rather support a company that has worked in the city before and that administration has worked with, and that does use a lot of local subcontractors if possible. It just makes me feel a little more comfortable. I realize it's a little bit more money, but I know we have a little bit of extra that we put into operating reserve this year that we could pull that money from. My biggest concern, I just find it really curious that the amount put forward by SVEMI is bang on to what's available. Like, that's been set aside. To me, the other, when I looked in the in-camera and I looked at the budgets, the other budget presented by Scott seemed more genuine, more thought out. It just almost seems to me that SVEMI just plugged some numbers and said, okay, let's just get to 200,000, and that's, I don't know. I don't want to question their integrity or how they did things, but I found it really curious that it was bang on 200,000, and that's all I had to say.
Chief Judge?
So the 200,000 was disclosed in the RFP.
No, and I get that.
I should say that, but the feelings you've expressed are my exact same thing. I have nothing against SVEMI. I don't want to run them down in any way, but I'm much more comfortable with the local company we've dealt with before. That's all.
I know they both knew that it was 200,000. I just found it really curious that they're not even a penny over.
And yet one knew the amount and chose to be 30% more.
True, but I think it's just that when they factored in their budget, I think they just to me, it's just a more genuine budget. These are the costs. And they weren't afraid to put that out there and say, look, we can't do it for 200,000. This is the genuine cost. And I think to me, that's more telling than to have a number that's bang on. Because my fear is not so much that they'll be late, but all of a sudden, we didn't foresee this additional cost. We need another, I know there's penalties going to be involved and so forth, and a contract is a contract, but I don't know, that was my takeaway when I read this. Thank you.
Councillor Hibbs?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I guess my concern more goes back to I mean, originally I wasn't in favor of this project at all at this time. It's one of the, honestly, it's a bit of a vanity project, and I think that it's a little bit, honestly, tone deaf to be doing this right now. I don't think it's the right timing. And then the added factor that is more recent, that is a new development, is simply the cost of building materials. I question whether this is, again, the best timing for this project. I think it is something that needs to happen eventually, but I think that we're actually going to be getting less for more money at this time. So I guess I don't know how we can go about that other than not awarding the project. Is that even possible? I don't think that I can support this, although I had begrudgingly sort of come to the conclusion that this was going to happen. I think with the added, bonus of the cost of materials right now, I just think this is a bad idea. And so I'd like us to actually postpone this to a later date.
Thank you. Certainly fair enough comments. I think it's unrealistic, however, to expect that material costs are going to suddenly decrease anytime soon. The one that you're referring to, I'm expecting is probably lumber costs, and they are substantially high. However, in a project such as this, it is a minuscule amount of the overall project cost for that particular part, for whatever that's worth. Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I've been in City Hall when that bathroom is back up. Staff have to go home. Like, this has to be done ASAP. It's deplorable what that building smells like. And out of respect of our staff, I think this needs to be done as soon as possible. And I will echo what you commented about building construction costs. Who knows when they're going to come down? It could be 2-3 years, and it is what it is. And although I can know we have the history with Scott, $60,000 is still $60,000. And I support the original contract quote.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson, did I see your hand up as well first? Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I also hate to see us go over budget on this. I'm not real keen on renovating this building anyway. I think it's the worst building we own, but that's my opinion. So I would certainly not wish to go over, and with Scott Builders going over the budget. I'd like to see us stay at that original number, even though it may go over anyway, who knows. But I would not vote for Scott Builders.
Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I guess I appreciate everybody's comments that have been made, but I really don't think, sorry, Councillor Hibbs, that this is a vanity project. Ever since I've been a councillor, that we have to see all these wires, and you visit other municipalities, I think that this room should present better. And I get it that we can't sort of half upgrade it to make it look better. So we do have to go this whole route. I was really hopeful with the discussion earlier when we were making comments about wanting to support local and employ local when it came to the elections. So I was really troubled by this motion as well. I really can't, I really would rather support Scott Builders, but I don't know how we can defend $60,000 either. I wish, could we, I don't know what the process is. Can't we go back to them and just, well, I guess Director Piché did say she went back to them and say, how did you tweak this? Or could you tweak this, or was that presented correctly? But I can't, as much as I support doing this room now, I'd rather not support a company out of Calgary. But that's my comments.
Councillor Jacobson.
All right, I'll give my 2 cents, I guess. Yeah, I was never in support of this either, but I guess I'm the only person here who doesn't see aesthetic, because I think everything here is fine. But I also agree with the mayor. I would, as a citizen, I would have a problem with a council that would in some way begrudge their administration for not having a renovation finished on time. As much as I appreciate that thought, I think that's frankly irrelevant. I also frankly have a problem with giving preference to a company simply because they're local in a tendering process. I think maybe if that's a one-off, that works. I think that sets a precedent that over time starts to erode people's confidence in submitting bids because they're going to say, well, what's the point? They're going to give preference to local anyway. And over time, that creates a scenario where you're not getting best value for your taxpayer dollar. So I do support the Svamy construction bid.
Thank you. Councillor Konik?
Sorry, just as a follow-up to Councillor Hibbs and Councillor Hoekstra, I would agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Hoekstra that this cannot be postponed. I hate saying this, I've said this many times. When I was first elected, both City Hall and the Public Works building were on the 10-year capital plan. And we're just now finally getting the Public Works building, and we are going to be in this building for a minimum of a decade, if not longer. So is there a good time, a bad time? I just, with all due respect, it has to be done. I think, as Councillor Ross had alluded to, that sewage problem, that was horrible when it happened. That cannot be allowed to happen again. And as for this room, it's just long overdue. It's, as Councillor Hoekstra said, this is the face of this council, and it needs to be done because we're going to be in this, not me necessarily, but future councils will be in this room for many, many, many more years. So I think it absolutely needs to be done, and thank you.
Councillor Hibbs?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I guess I just want to make one comment. When I say a vanity project, I mean specifically this room. I don't want to have anybody think that the rest of the project isn't very worthwhile. And I should hope that if we were stuck in a situation where we have a finite amount of money and that it's being spent, that the primary amount of it is being spent on the project that really makes a big difference, like the bathrooms, and that perhaps we could do without something in this room. But I just wanted to make that clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. So for me, I think I would certainly prefer if Scott was on and the dollar figures were flip-flop between the two companies to make the decision very easy. However, this is past my threshold of the previous item. 30% is 30%, and I think that this would severely undermine the entire pricing process should we award it to another company merely for the fact that they had worked here before, which was a positive experience. I'm assuming that's great. $60,000 is $60,000, and it's still 30% of the project, and that's beyond my threshold of comfort. So I would be supporting Svemy construction. Councillor Jacobson?
Sure, I'm just gonna move that council approve awarding the construction contract to Svemy Construction Limited for the City Hall renovation project.
Thank you. So obviously we've heard some different differences of opinion on this item, and I think that healthy debate is great. Lots of good reasons on both sides, but however this vote goes, with whomever gets it, I know that our administration will work closely with them, and it's nice that with the project being in this very building, it will be, or it ought to be, extremely easy to make sure that things are kept on track. That's as polite as I can be.
It's when you notice that they're going off track and what you can do that matters. So noticing it is one thing.
Very good. So we do have a motion before us. Councillor Konik.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. There was a mention in here that council could or would, administration invites council input during these renovations. When do we anticipate, like, will something be brought to us to say, hey, what do you guys think, or what?
Yes, so one of the first deliverables is with their designer and the contractor is going to be some design boards to take a look at different potential finishes and that sort of thing that council can weigh in on what the sort of general feel will be. Now, we've also included a component within the RFP to make sure there is some highlighting of Lacomb's history within the final design. And so we'll make sure to let you know what that's going to look like as well, and make sure that meets your expectations. Perfect.
Councillor Hookshaw.
I guess one further comment, I guess it should be noted that their designer is local from this company,
I
right?
believe they're
House
from
or something?
Tees or Clive?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I shouldn't be saying that it's totally, I did notice that.
That's his local Scott Builders. Very good. So everyone's clear on the motion for us? I will call the question then. All those in favor? And those opposed? Councillors Connick and Ross, thank you very much. So 5 to 2.
I think he's in favor.
Oh, that turned delayed.
I was in favor of the motion. Sorry about that.
Thank you for that clarification, Councillor Ross. That was 6 to 1. Darn video delay. I don't think I'll ever get used to it. So let the record reflect that Councillor Connick did not support this motion as read. Thanks, everyone.
My apologies.
Just to jump back to Councillor Connick's input over the storyboards for the finishes. So that will be forthcoming within the next month or so, or?
I don't have that exact detail, but I would imagine, yes, about a month to 6 weeks, something like that.
And regardless of that, when will council no longer be meeting in this space? Because I'm assuming that demolition will likely start shortly after awarding the contract.
Director Piché, do you have the timelines for when council will be meeting in an alternate space?
The plan is to move council after the May 25th meeting. So, excuse me, sorry. So we'll have our council meeting on May 25th in this room. And then after that, we will be tearing it down and setting up over at the LMC for the June, I believe, 7th committee meeting, if that is to go forward. Yeah.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions? That item for process? All good? So we'll move into the information section of our agenda. Chief Gowdy, did you have a report for us?
I did not have a report. Much as this meeting is actually appearing to wrap up in a reasonable time, there was a lot of behind the scenes work, and with things lining up as they did, there was 4 meetings in 5 weeks. And so I wanted to acknowledge that it's not just me that was working on this. A lot of administrative staff also put in many hours. And so my apologies for the lack of the report. I will certainly have that at the next meeting. And thank you to the many staff and actually past colleagues as well that helped me in preparing the report for you, because I did need a lot of help from others in processing some of the items there.
More importantly, you recognize just how efficient that council is in proceeding through this meeting, so thank you for that. Council mailbox items, we got an email there from Canada Post dated April 22nd. Any questions or input on that item? Councillor Hibbs, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Actually, I have a question for CAO Gowdy, just following his sort of report.
Ouch.
I'm kidding. I did have a resident contact me earlier this week, really concerned about our COVID numbers, and that is the only reason I'm bringing up your report is because you typically do mention that in your report. And I have noticed that we have come down significantly from our high, but I have noticed today's reporting has us jumping back up again a few. So anyways, just to relay to the rest of you in case you have not heard as well, she was just very concerned that perhaps our COVID page has not been keeping up with the most recent announcements like restrictions, et cetera, et cetera. She also had concerns that perhaps because the numbers aren't really being, I don't know, published that she was aware of, that she's concerned that the general public may or may not know like what the current case counts or relatively current case counts are in the community. And given the fact that we did go into the 170s at least at one point, which is obviously remarkably higher than we had been at any of the previous waves, she just was concerned that, you know, just the way that people are, you know, living their day-to-day lives are not being, maybe not being in response to what the actual numbers are in town. So I guess what I wanted to ask then is an update from administration as to, I know that you have spoken with that person, and have there been changes made to how we are communicating to our residents, you know, regarding COVID? Yeah, I guess that would be my question.
So I believe we're at 162 cases today, if I'm not mistaken. That was my most recent review. You know, after we also talked to that resident. I think that the criticism that we could do better in maintaining the lacombe.ca/COVID website was something we absolutely took on board and have been providing much more regular updates. I want to say daily, but not on the weekend. When there has been significant updates, we've been keeping the case count and any new restrictions on there. As I explained to this individual, if I'm thinking of the same one of the challenges that we have in providing more sort of real-time data. So for example, the suggestion that maybe we would include the actual case counts in the newspaper, for example, is that given the publishing timelines and the submission deadlines, it would actually make the city, in my opinion, look less competent because you'd get a paper coming out that said, we're at 50 cases, and people would say, you're at 160 cases. Are you guys aware that you're way off on your numbers? As far as another suggestion I received, not just from this individual, but fairly regularly, is more frequent updates of the signs, more frequent updates of our signs. And I guess I want to be clear, that is a contracted service that we have with a local business. We do not own those signs. And I certainly wish that he had the staff and resources to execute it in one day. What we have seen is that this contractor's ability to change all the signs is that it takes him about 6 to 7 days to get through it all. So short of providing additional city resources to do that or purchasing the signs ourselves, we are sort of going to dance with the one that brought us, if you know that term, because he has actually, as much as I wish it were a faster turnover, this contractor has been very good to the city in terms of rates, in terms of responsiveness, and I would just not want to see us make the change now after we've gone through as far as we have. However, the concerns brought forward were valid. We have provided more frequent updates. This particular resident had also brought some concerns that I'm sure that should come to you about certain specific city facilities and the enforcement thereon. So we've reviewed those sites and taken action there as well.
So certainly a concern for some citizens in our community, and for the ones that are hypersensitive to that types of data. Perhaps a link to AHS would be the most appropriate route to go and provide the most up-to-date information that we have. That's not precisely the function of the city to keep that up to date. That service is already available to anyone that chooses to access it. As far as everyone continuing on with their day-to-day lives, I happen to commend everyone for doing so in the city of Lacombe, for continuing on with their daily lives. And doing such a good job of following the protocols as laid out. I think that we've got an engaged citizenry that is doing a great job. There's lots of factors that go into these numbers that we see, and while everyone would prefer that they were lower, I do not see that necessarily a reflection of some sort of ill intent from our citizens. So suffice it to say that I don't think that we need to be getting carried away buying more signs or changing more signs. No one expects those to be up to date day to day. And for those people that are hypersensitive, AHS ought to be the point of contact to go and get the information direct from the horse's mouth as far as things go this evening. Councillor Cock.
Thank you, Mayor Christine. Further to the comments that were made, I too had a chat with this individual. I just think that we need to also better clarify in our messaging that the police or bylaw are not actively looking to, they're not seeking out gatherings or illegal. You know, I think there's an expectation that we should be doing more enforcement. We actually don't have the power per se to do that. And I think that should be expressed a little bit as well in our messaging, because I think people think that we should be doing that. If they see 8 people playing ball hockey, that somehow bylaw should be going out there writing tickets. No, that's not within their purview. So I think that message should just be expressed as well, a little bit clearer in our messaging. So that's all I have.
I think just by mentioning it here this evening is a great start. So thank you for that. Councillor Gluckson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. It's a prime thing for the electronic sign. Could be perfect.
Good for you.
You could change that twice a day if you wanted to. It'd be real easy. Yes, it'd be ideal. And you'd save all that money on that other signs, pay for itself. Anyway, I feel the same way that Lacomb's been fairly good as far as meeting the guidelines with the masks and everything else. They haven't been 100%, and we have a lot of non-believers in town that think there isn't a pandemic. So it's difficult that way, but it is what it is, and then we just have to deal with these right now. And as far as bylaw and police, I would hope, and maybe we can't give them direction, but I would hope if they see somebody breaking those rules, that they might just mention to them that you are breaking the rules. We're not going to give tickets, but the rules are this. And I would hope they would do that because, I mean, we have a lot of different places that are breaking those laws now. And it's, I don't know, I mean, I'm mixed with it. Of course, I'd like to see us back to normal, but I don't believe that we should be breaking those Alberta health laws or regulations.
Very good. Continuing on with that. Oh, one more, Councillor Hibbs.
Sorry, thank you, Mayor Creasy. Yeah, so I do appreciate that as an update as far as what transpired since that conversation. I think that's appreciated, obviously, by that resident, as well as I think that will just be beneficial to everybody. It's not a matter of trying to scaremonger everybody. It's just a matter of giving them accurate and as close to up-to-date information. Some of the reasons that we changed the website in the first place was that so we could sort of eliminate all the stuff that we were doing and sort of do some stuff very well. And so that's what I want to see, especially with something that's that important, especially to some residents. So it's not a matter of pushing out the numbers and scaring people. It's just giving them access to the information. And we can easily do that by providing those links that we talked about, like to AHS, because yes, they're the ones that have the most current information. So if we can make that readily available because people have ease using our website, then I think that's great news. So thank you for that.
All right, we've got a couple of letters originating from Tollfield, 6.2b and 6.2c, and I know there was some question as to why we would be highlighting letters from another community that were not even addressed to us, which I found odd at first, but given that they were made out to AUMA and instructed to be distributed to other communities, that is the reason why we have them. They do not necessarily express the views of Lacombe, but given it came from AUMA, that is the reason why they're there. Any input on either of those? Next up is the financial statements for our library. for 2020? Any input there? And the annual report from the Parkland Regional Library for 2020 is next. Under commissions, boards, and committee reports and minutes, the Lacombe Regional Waste Services Commission minutes from February 24th are before us. Any questions or concerns there? Either myself or Councillor Hibbs will certainly endeavor to answer them. Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I just had a question about the mattress recycling program. I know that isn't, but what are we actually doing with these mattresses? Like, because it says something about them being shipped.
That is correct. So the mattress recycling program, from our perspective, is a collection program. It did present some difficulties in that previously all of the mattresses were added to the landfill, and they basically get caught up in the tracks of the cat and make quite a maintenance mess, quite a disaster to look after. So
because of the coils?
yes, the spring steel coils in them. So partially because of that, but also because of the high volume that they pose by their very nature. This program was come across 5 or 6 months ago. I think we started speaking of it.
Relatively recent.
That's fair. Yeah. So we got on board, and through a generous grant from Dow Chemical. I almost said their neighbor company, so it was Dow Chemical. This program was initiated whereby all mattresses are collected and stored at the Prentice facility until such time as there is a semi-trailer load of them. And that has happened far more quickly and far more regularly than anyone ever dreamt possible. It's quite amazing the amount of mattresses that go out of there, and they go to a facility in Calgary. The materials are stripped off of them. The steel is recycled. The wood is bunched up and reutilized somehow. So all of the items are taken care of from that point on.
Thank you.
Memory serves me correctly, I think in the first 3 months of the program, there was 12 or 1,300 mattresses. I mean, I was quite shocked actually how many there was myself, but.
I can't recall, but it was taken up quite well anyways, yeah.
If you watch how many mattress commercials are on TV, everyone must be replacing their mattresses or something.
So we can might as well get into councillor reports. Who'd like to start? Councillor Wilson, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. My report's there. Attended a Lacombe Days meeting on April 14th and a library board meeting on April 27th. And I'm just looking at this, and I was able to write the report on April 7th, so I must have been psychic about that. Anyway, the board meeting for the library, BDO was in attendance and presented the financials, and we had some more discussion regarding the Daisy readers and the library's role in that. Other than that, everything's going well there. And on the Lacombe Day side, a committee was formed to select a new coordinator, which has been completed.
Thank you. Any questions, anyone? Next up, Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. My report is there. I don't know if anybody has questions about that, but I also had a Lacombe Foundation meeting today, and I would like to read an email that I just received just before council started. It says, "Good afternoon, board members. Lacombe Senior Citizens Lodge has been declared an outbreak of COVID-19. One staff has tested positive, and other staff were identified as close contacts. And an outbreak is 2 or more, but no residents." And so I just wanted to emphasize that here tonight, that no residents have COVID. And I also wanted to bring that up just in terms of the comment that people in Lacombe don't believe COVID exists. They do. I think there's lots of people who would like there to be a different response to COVID. And this is one of those really good ones, that inconsistent messaging. The staff member who tested positive wasn't in the building since Friday a week ago. And somehow other staff were still declared close contacts. And in my experience, because unfortunately I'm involved with it in a number of spots, at close contact, it's within the 48 hours previous to you experiencing symptoms. So I think it's the inconsistencies that frustrate people. And the other really interesting thing that came out of the meeting today is there's an Order 16 that covers seniors facilities, and it's all about changing how they're responding to COVID. And 2 designated family members per resident has now been increased to 4. And seniors are allowed outdoor visits of 10 people. So everybody can, and yes, the comment was, as opposed to 5 for the rest of us. So I think it's the inconsistency that sometimes makes us a little bit concerned about how this all rolls out. So I don't mean to be stirring the pot, but I know I am stirring the pot. The point of this story is it's unfortunate the Seniors Lodge does have COVID in its staff, but it all is with people that haven't been in the building. So hopefully, under no circumstances, any of the residents will get it, but thankfully they're all vaccinated, and so we know that helps in terms of how they will respond to being infected. But that's my update.
Certainly appreciate the clarification there in the update. Wish all those people all the best, and hopefully they get through it as unscathed as possible. Would you happen to know what percentage of individuals have been immunized at a facility?
The comment today was they were all. So, but I know that doesn't include all the staff. Not all staff chose to be immunized, and but my understanding is the residents that could have.
Very good. I just wanted to make that perfectly clear. Sometimes when a person says outbreak, it conjures up images that are far more dire than that. So, very good. Councillor Ross? Perhaps while you get your electronics figured out there, if you've got a report, we'll get back to you and we'll continue. There we go.
My apologies, I hit the wrong button. I have no report at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jacobson? Councillor Hibbs? No. Councillor Connick? Very good. Once again, we're being very efficient this evening. Appreciate it. Next up is minutes from April 26th from our regular council meeting. Councillor Hoekstra.
I'll first make a motion to accept the information as information.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Previous minutes. Councillor Jacobson.
Move we adopt the April 26, 2021 regular council meeting minutes as presented.
Thank you. No revisions or adjustments needed there? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. And section 8, notices of motion from April 26. Councillor Hibbs, would you care to start with item 8.1?
Sure, thank you, Mayor Creasy. So yes, 8.1, the motion was submitted that says that council review and discuss bylaw 381, which is business license bylaw, with the intent of altering or eliminating business license fees at the May 25th council meeting. I have had a few conversations with business owners that they don't really see why we do business license fees the way they do. They find that it's something that's just another tax on them without really having a reason for why we collect them. And it just got me to thinking that perhaps it's time to revisit that again. I know that we sort of did talk about this at one time, but I just wonder if it's worth sort of a revisit as far as, you know, why do we collect those fees? What are they used for? Could we alter how we collect them? For example, maybe we approach it more like like the system that we have for animals, whereas you pay the one time up front, and then that's, you know, for the lifetime of your business per se, so that it isn't an annual thing that are now causing bylaw to have to go chase down, you know, business owners because, you know, things are in arrears or whatever the case may be. I still think it's important probably that we have business licenses. And honestly, I'd like some consideration to be made as to even revisiting what penalties are for businesses that operate without a business license, for example, because I do actually find that to be a very large problem in this community, especially when it comes to home-based businesses, that you have businesses that do it the right way. They come to MPC, they go through the process, you know, they add the parking, they accept the conditions they accept to operate a business in this community. And then yet you have businesses that are doing the exact same service, but had to do none of that because they didn't go through the process that, you know, the ones that follow the law do. So I guess that's kind of what I'm thinking of when I'm, you know, why I'm bringing this forward is just sort of a revisit, I guess, how we can do that better. And it does incorporate fees. Again, something else, sorry, I should have made better notes, but even when you do receive a business license, you know, invoice, I guess, in the mail, there's a couple of different costs. Like one of them is economic development, for example. It's like a little surcharge or whatever. It's the small piece out of the fee. So like, to me, that I'm confused. It really should be the other way around, shouldn't it? So again, I just think that there's a whole lot of area here for us to revisit. If we want to be known as a business-friendly community, which I think we are, but I think we could do better. I think this is the conversation that would sort of facilitate that. So I guess that's what I would be asking for your support to be having a look at.
Chief Cody.
Just to give you a view of how we would interpret this administratively, should the motion pass as it's presented today, we will on the 25th bring you a request for decision that will have at a high level, here's how you currently regulate business licenses, here's the number of them, maybe over time we'd give you some stats, here's the value that we've seen over the past 3 years and where the money goes. If there are earmarked programs, as you talked about, the 25% towards the economic development officer manager position, we can highlight those and then lay out some high level possible paths to further explore, which we have talked about internally a bit. And then if council gives us direction to say, yeah, we want to talk more about options 1 and 3 or just 1 or whatever, then we would bring back a first reading of a bylaw for you to consider that would enact some of those provisions. So it would be the 25th would give you some high level options and information. You would give us direction, potentially possibly at the committee meeting in June, but I'm not sure about the timing yet, or that first meeting in June. But it would be a meeting in June where you receive a first reading that actually gave you the ability to enact whatever your contemplated changes would be.
So for me, this has been an ongoing question. I think that business licenses came about for very good reason. However, their effectiveness has somewhat diminished over time, in my opinion. I think there is a certain degree of professionalism when you walk into a business and you clearly see a business license in the wall. It gives you a sense that this business complies with some kind of rules, but in reality, there are very few. I think perhaps one instance would be for taxi services. We have business licenses for them, and I think most people would logically expect that someone who has a business license also complies with other regulations provincially and whatnot. And I can guarantee you that is not what that does guarantee. They very well may comply, but by having a municipal, but a business license, that isn't in no way, shape, or form to be construed as somehow that they have went through that process to the approval of the municipality. So there's certainly some difficult areas with this. One other reason that was often referred to was to ensure that people from outside the community weren't coming in and taking away work from locals. So they had to have a special business license, those kind of things. It's kind of a, once again, if it worked the way it was supposed to, that would be one thing, but quite honestly, I'm not really sure that it does. So this is certainly something that I would look at. I would certainly not be in favor of adjusting them for the current year, either altering them at the date of the renewal, which I believe is January 1st of each year.
Correct.
So that's something I would certainly consider and look at, but it would be interesting to see the information that comes forward and the overall impact to the city budget and from the eyes of our citizens both. So I think that I would support at least looking at this. Chief Cody.
One other comment that I will make is that and you may have, Councillor Hibbs may have referred to this earlier. In 2019, in May of 2019, Councillor Hoekstra had submitted a question that we responded to administratively through the RFI process regarding business licenses. One of your questions at that time was about whether a regional business license model would ever be feasible or palatable. I said at that time, I think it would be very tough. Since then, there has been provincial support expressed several times for the idea of regional business licenses. And so I think that that actually probably could be one of the possible avenues that you would look at. So just to not correct that information, it was correct at the time, but to update that information from when you asked it in 2019.
Certainly an interesting concept, and I would think that whatever inefficiencies and inconsistencies that we have here, we should be able to multiply them at least tenfold with a regional approach. I'm sorry, but that's just, I certainly not, at this point, I'm certainly not in favor of pursuing that. But once again, something to look at in the future. So given that this is worded, altering or eliminating license, business license fees at the May 25th council meeting, it's been outlined that that is not correct. So do we need some different wording with this notice of motion?
I think it still works because you will review and discuss bylaw 381 with that intent on May 25th. I just wanted to make sure, be very explicit that the actual change will not occur on May 25th because, of course, that's a three reading process for the bylaw, and so there's a defined process for that.
Very good. So we're good with the wording the way that it is then?
Yes,
Very good.
that does capture my attention. I guess the only thing that I would say is that I wouldn't limit it only to obviously business license fees, although that's kind of where it started, but I think it kind of germinates a larger discussion just about business licenses generally, yeah, I guess. But yes, I understand that this is just to say that we're going to talk about it, and then at that point, I guess council will decide whether we actually go with it anywhere. But this at least allows this conversation to happen, I guess, is essentially what today's motion is in regards to.
Thank you. Anyone else? With respect to the motion before us, all those in favor? Those opposed?
I think you had Chris opposed.
So, so noted, Councillor Ross, thank you.
I'm sorry, I was delayed again. My apologies.
With that in mind, please clarify your vote verbally.
I voted in favor, please. My apologies.
Very good. That is very easy. That is. Thank you. And item 8.2, motion, or no, so motion to reconsider. Councillor Hibbs?
So I guess just before I go ahead and start this one, I guess I would like clarification maybe from the CAO for everybody's benefit, because this is a notice of motion to reconsider technically, what the standard is, I guess, to even have it occur.
Yes, so the standard for it to occur, we did check with Municipal Affairs, is that as this is a notice of motion to reconsider, and you were on the or you and others were on the prevailing side of that, of the vote to pass this year's tax penalty and payment bylaw, a member of the prevailing side, such as yourself, can make such a motion to reconsider as you have done. For it to pass, you will need a motion, you will need 5 of 7 councillors to agree. I unfortunately have some additional information that's going to, well, just change things a little bit, I guess. We have looked at what the process will be of how we can affect the intended outcome. And unfortunately, we are very close to the point of no return, I would say, if not there, on the tax notices. Right now, we intend to print those tax notices starting tomorrow. Unfortunately, because this is a notice of motion to reconsider, what you will need to do, should you wish to proceed with a deferral of the tax deadline to December 31st. And I should note that a deferral from the current deadline to December 31st is the exact same as waiving penalties in effect for 2021. Those two outcomes have the same end, and they're actually the same process. So they both require an amendment of the bylaw. Therein lies the difficulty. If council is to 5 of 7 pass this and you review it, you need to get 3 readings complete in time to send the tax notices to residents and businesses with that new information. So to get 3 readings, we have mapped it out of what the process would be, including our administrative process. The only way that you are going to be able to do this is if you pass the first motion, then you pass a first reading of a bylaw, of the tax penalty and payment bylaw, tonight, as it exists today, but with a change to the deadline. So to say from July 1st to December 31st. Then you will need to pass a unanimous consent to proceed to 2nd and 3rd reading. And then you will need to pass 2nd and 3rd reading of the bylaws that aren't before you, they're not prepared in that way for you to review. We did look also at what it would look like to host a special meeting. You could do that, but with the 24 hours minimum notice for hosting a special meeting, the earliest you can do that is Wednesday. When we looked at our administrative process, you likely are going to be an actual week behind, where residents will be receiving in, say, like June 7th, June 10th, notices that potentially could tell them their taxes are due June 30th. And that's an unlikely scenario because it relies on council setting this special meeting and then reversing its decision and saying, no, we want to hold on to the original deadline. But it is possible. And I just don't think that would be, well, it wouldn't be fair to business and homeowners, I don't think, to be getting a notice of such a large bill with less than a month to pay it. So it's not to say it's not possible, your intended outcome. It is more difficult than I would like, than I wish it were. It's more difficult than I wish it were. And so I just give you that additional context that it is going to be some specialized
resolutions to make this happen tonight.
Appreciate the extra information. We'll get to you just in 1 second, Councillor Hibbs. I was curious, we have a fairly well-respected TIP program where people are able to pay monthly. Is there a cutoff date for that? Or can property owners pay a certain amount and have it brought into effect anytime through the year, or is there cutoff times? How does that work?
Like, could you pay half and then go on tips for the remaining half? Is that the question?
Sure, that kind of scenario. Or is there an absolute cutoff date when you are no longer eligible to be involved with the TIPS program? I think you understand why I'm asking this, is simply because, well, I think that the idea of postponing this is certainly well-intentioned. I'm just not sure if there's ever any end game to get back on side with it. So I think there's room to try and get the remaining population that is not on board with the monthly program to at least pursue their options, with the realization, I think it's, for the vast majority of people, it's very unrealistic to expect that they would have a windfall of money on December 31st any more than any time of the year. I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but it's relatively unlikely. And given that that's an issue for someone to consider, they might want to consider alternate means of keeping up with their tax roll.
So there are 2 times from my review that a person can join the TIPS program. One January 1st, and then one for the months of June through December. So they're calculated 2 different ways. It's kind of the first half.
Anytime June through December?
No.
June or December.
So when you are to go onto the TIPS program, it will either start June 1st or January 1st.
Okay.
If it starts June 1st, your payment will be equal to 1/7 of the amount. If it's January 1st, it is 1/12 of the amount.
Okay, that's the input. Thank you. Councillor Hibbs?
Only just because I've just recently signed up for that, as in within the last year. If you're at least just before the deadline for February, you can still like get on in February as long as you haven't missed the deadline. Just saying. I guess the other thing I wanted to say too is just because we did defer last year, it's only really been 6 months since the last time, which is why I feel like that was the impetus for this whole problem, is that depending on how people's finances go, you know, it could have only just been a very short period of time since the last like full out property tax. I do want to point out that I have not actually read the motion. We've only just been talking about it. And I have specifically done that on purpose because I'm questioning whether I actually want to read this motion. I believe in the intent of it. I am concerned that there are people in this community that, you know, would benefit from that. However, thinking about it, I know at our last meeting, or at least our last proper council meeting, not the committee meeting, we did agree that we would defer taxes on request in a specific situation. And so I'm thinking that that option, as well as what was brought up by Mayor Creasy, which I had not thought about, thank you for that, is another option as well. If people are willing to, if they're needing it, if they can just, I guess, approach council directly. I don't know how well that would be taken up because it is kind of public, if nothing else. But so anyways, I guess the short answer to what I'm saying here is I am choosing, if it's possible, to simply not read a motion into the record and not put that on the table. I made a notice of motion, but it is not actually, in fact, on the table, so.
I don't know that we've had this type of situation come before, but I expect there will be some sort of rules in one way or another. We will accommodate that, whether we just have to vote on and defeat it or whatnot. But let's ask our legislative coordinator, Coordinator Pettibone, what would be the rules on the originator of a notice of motion to not read into the official record a notice of motion from a previous meeting.
Well, I think the thing that comes to mind, Mayor Creasy and Council, is you have the option of withdrawing a motion. It can be done after a motion is stated. The mover can accept an amendment without obtaining the floor. So that's one way, or I don't know that it needs to even be that formal. I mean, you guys have discussed it in council, and as Councillor Hibbs has stated, she hasn't read her motion, so.
So you're suggesting that a relatively easy and clean way would just read it into the motion, given that it's already in print and whatnot, and then have her withdraw the motion afterwards? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes, you can state the motion by reading it, and then make a motion to withdraw it, and that would be one way of dealing with it. But
well, the upside of that is I think it would be odd to have it in print, and then it's not to address it and have it formally looked after, so that future individuals looking at the minutes don't wonder what on earth happened here. Did they miss us altogether? What's going on? Is it in effect or not? So for the reasons that stated, if that would be acceptable to do that, that would be the route that I think that I would do.
So just for clarification, then I would just be making a motion to withdraw my intended motion, because I wouldn't actually read it in then, or would I actually have to read it in and then?
I believe you have to read it in, given that it was given as a notice of motion at the previous meeting. So you read it in and then just what's proper, rescind or withdraw, and then just withdraw it afterwards is what Coordinator Pettibone suggested. Is that correct, Ross?
right, because you wouldn't vote on it on the first motion at all. You just read it and then make another motion to withdraw. Then you deal with that second motion to withdraw, right? And then you can vote on that. And if it's withdrawn, you don't have to do anything with it. So it's done. Unless, of course, you're willing to simply all just vote on the motion after she reads it. That's the other alternative.
That option will be available to Councillor Hibbs, depending on how she chooses to take it from there. So the floor is yours, Councillor Hibbs.
All right, well, I do think that probably the the motion to withdraw would be the route I would prefer to go, because I think that's a more accurate description as to what's happening. It's not a matter of rejecting the motion, it's a matter of just rejecting this way of doing things, I guess. So I guess I'll read the motion then, that council direct administration to bring an amendment to bylaw 379, the tax penalty and payment bylaw, to defer without penalty the 2021 residential and non-residential property tax collection due date to December 31st, 2021. And I would move that that council would withdraw that motion. Would be council that would withdraw that motion?
Correct, by a vote, yes.
Thank you.
By a vote, okay.
Anyone care to comment on the notice of motion itself? Councillor Connacht?
Just, I appreciate the intent of that, but again, I, for one, am not comfortable with doing a hurry up offense to try and do a bylaw change without actually, I don't think we could get it done in the timelines presented properly, so.
Exactly.
Yeah, same sentiment for me, a little different reasoning. I think that well-intentioned gesture and may in fact help some people in our community. I think that the tax roll that was revealed and how it went last year would suggest it's an extremely small slice of the pie, of which I'm thankful for. For me, the problem comes in for this to come back for consideration. I don't really understand what has changed appreciably since council's decision previously to reduce the penalty to half, I believe it was, or from 10 to 5 or 9 to 5 or whatever the heck, whatever the exact numbers were. I just don't see that anything has change appreciable enough for us to reconsider it. So that's my reasoning, but certainly the intent of it is well intentioned. Anyone else? With respect to the motion to withdraw then, all those in favor? Any opposed? Very good, that's all unanimous. Thanks, everyone. There is a couple of in-camera items after we go through the next meetings. We've got a regular council meeting scheduled at 5 p.m. on Tuesday, May 25th, which was referred to earlier, I think, in one of the notices of motion. Then we've got a council committee meeting of the whole, once again at 5 p.m. on Monday, June 7th. And following that on June 14th at 5 p.m. is our regular council meeting. Was there any appetite for time adjustment for the council committee meeting on June 7th? Very good. I'll leave those dates for everyone then. And that takes us to section 9. Councillor Connacht.
Do we have to go on camera? I don't believe, I think the two items are related to the, don't necessarily.
Yes, they were just proposals. They were the proposals from the contractor for the project here, as well as the dry cooler. So certainly we can go in and answer any questions, but those are the only two items.
Councillor Hoekstra.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'm sensing that there was not a lot of appetite for the in-camera portion then. And unless there was breaking news there, I think that we can adjourn at 8:17 with everybody's blessing. All those in favor. Thanks, everyone.